Hello and welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. This is episode number 28 and it's been I think a couple of weeks since we did the last one.
Yeah, I think it's the same again, around 2 weeks, which is better. Consistency, key.
I mean with the official schedule I think we will still try and stick to one a week. Just don't rely on us. Rely on us to do one every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
which I think is reasonable.
Yeah, indeed. And also it's been a pretty big 2 weeks in terms of both on-pitch antics and off-pitch antics, and all kinds of stuff has happened in the interim since we've been gone. So we'll obviously be addressing some stuff regarding World Cup bids and such, but we're going to start off, as is our mantra on this podcast, with the stuff that happened on the field, which is the actual rugby that's being played, and some of the stuff that we saw in the internationals just gone, really, is where we're...
Yeah, the November internationals and the international game is absolutely going to be our focus, I think understandably so. I'm not actually sure to what extent we missed club rugby, but I don't think it was to a great extent.
We missed a bit, but it was domestic stuff.
So anyway, the first thing that we're going to just look at is the number one team in the world, which is the All Blacks. They played France twice.
They're the old nemesis from their point of view in terms of the up north, Northern Hemisphere challenges. It always is, like they always give them due credit. It feels like we know France better than New Zealand in terms of modern iteration, but the All Blacks do always seem to have not even a hiccup, but they just have this weird focus on France. They have a real consciousness that, oh shit, it's France again.
I think that's fading. I don't really see that anymore. Not for a good long while now, I don't think. I think this iteration of France have nothing in common with previous iterations, and it's just another game for the All Blacks, just another 2 games, bizarrely.
Yeah, I didn't even realise that before the second game had happened, that they were playing them twice.
Yeah, it's a money-making thing. It's just about putting dollars into bank, and so they did. They both picked like hodgepodge teams. Like, they're obviously international standard teams for that second test, but there was no combinations or nothing. It was all just like the players who are still fit to play, who didn't really play last weekend, who are in our squad, will line out and just throw the ball around for 80 minutes and then shake hands, and that's more or less what seemed to happen. Yeah. The All Blacks, obviously being the better side, just about won that one, but the first test was more both sides proper teams playing,
prepping for it, like a weekend test.
And in that test, the All Blacks were comfortably better, especially in the first half.
Seemed to set up their stall.
It wasn't a great game, really, for me at least. The All Blacks were good. They weren't exceptional. They were finding tries pretty easy to come by. French defence not looking great. For me, the All Blacks, their job this year is pretty much done.
That seems to be the like, just in terms of looking at the dynamic of how they are on pitch, they seem like it's as good as they are, and they're able to play extremely well and find those tries. The intensity isn't up at the highest. Like, they don't, doesn't feel like there isn't that many things at stake for them.
There's nothing at stake. There's nothing at stake for anybody, and this is the weird. This tour is really weird in that capacity. Nobody's playing anybody other than the England-Australia match happening this week. There's no real high-profile games going on, and then there's nothing at stake because there's no World Cup ranking points at stake. So it's just. They almost feel like friendlies. They feel certainly lower intensity games than most end of year tours for the Southern Hemisphere teams. The All Blacks were good. They weren't great. France came back in the second half and scared them. I like to see that from France for sure. They certainly have a nous and an ability to exploit space when they see it.
Yeah, they have an understanding of the break as well, like more so than a lot of other teams. They like their back play, and even a lot of their forwards understand to shift the ball towards space, and that means when you get like kind of looser game, like not in terms of just in the second half and stuff, when games break up, they can strike. They do have that striking ability we've been discussing, especially with some of those big wingers they have. They just still have, like, the defence is fundamentally a bit too porous for international level, and like a few of those tries, like the Dane Cole's try, as well as good a line as it was a little soft.
It was all soft, and that whole first half was just softness from France. All Blacks playing at very low intensity, and even during the comeback they were taking 3-pointers trying to get back in it.
I hate that. That permeates the top tours as well, and it's a weird ethos.
The All Blacks at the moment are kind of there for the taking. They were like they were weak sauce against Australia. Weeks. I mean, it was a great game. It was a great game. It was, but they were not looking like the imperious best team in the world against Australia. They didn't look the imperious best team in the world against the Lions. They didn't look the imperious best team in the world in Cape Town against South Africa. They didn't look like the imperious best team in the world in that Barbarians game that they nearly lost. And they didn't look it again in this game. And in the second half, they looked rattled. They certainly not cohesive and just tired and well beatable. And France just didn't seem to look for tries. So they kind of came close. Teddy Thomas came close to making it a one-score game, but then it sort of faded away. And as good as it is to see them sort of fighting back, they're not.
It's still the fighting of like a team that's already lost the game, and just kind of
doesn't really believe that they can win, and just it isn't very good. What really irritated me about this team is just that the selection is completely different. Again, it's 2 new halfbacks. It's an entirely new back row. The centres, Bastro's back. Like what drives me crazy, there was a whole other team then again in the midweek match. I don't really see what Guy Novez's plan is. He certainly hasn't revealed it, if he has a long-term plan. Like, there's a bit of strength and depth there maybe, but they don't seem to value consistency in anything. So consistency in style, consistency in approach, consistency in combinations, in selection, in anything. So it's just like, you wonder why it's inconsistent on the pitch. It's because it's inconsistent from the point of the drawing board. And this team, like, obviously Camille Lopez is injured, so that's a problem there, but Penaud is not injured. So that team that they had in the Six Nations, it's an entirely new backline. Speddings, they've decided they're going against. Brice Dulin, not having you, and it's a whole new thing, and it's a whole new team and a whole new group of players. And then when the Six Nations come through, like, it would be fine, because we're 2 years out from a World Cup. It would be fine to just say, we're not good enough now, let's start from scratch. But I don't believe for a second that that's what this is. It's just another random selection of young top tours players based vaguely on form, and then when the form switches, they'll pick another group in the Six Nations, and then they'll do it again in the summer tour next year, and again in the autumn, and again in next year's Six Nations, and then they're going to come into the World Cup with another new squad, and you just don't know what to make of it. It's just nothing there that's sustainable. There's nothing there that can win a tournament, because other teams like Ireland and England are so used to each other and are so, like, there's real value in combinations and getting to know each other and working on your game and being together in a Murray and Sexton-esque way in Ireland, getting to know one another and getting the feel for one another's games that just isn't appreciated by France. And it just strikes me as weirdly unprofessional. They just want to come for a kickabout. They're good players, but they just want to come for a kickabout, and that's what both of these games for me seem to be from France. Just
kickabouts. It's that's definitely a true point. They do, like, they value form, but they also just panic on like poor form as well. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they drop a handful of players they deemed played badly this week, and then just ship in a few
they
more.
They actually haven't. They've gone with the same side.
They're going with
the
same
South African game, so we'll see what happens
Consistency.
there.
for this week,
for this
at least
tour maybe.
But they're pretty reactionary as far as that's concerned, and you're right about that. Sure, their out half woes are well documented, and their struggles to find consistent players in that position.
They did look good, the young halfbacks. They're just new and out of nowhere.
Yeah, and see, I still don't doubt their instincts at all. I still think the French can play rugby. I just find that through this, they systematically don't, from top to bottom a lot of the time, and it's pretty vexing. It's just you're right. The unprofessionalism is kind of the key point as well, because just when you see what, like, the strident advances being made by the likes of Ireland and England that you mentioned, or the All Blacks, who were the trailblazers for that, and initially it was Graham Henry, and now it's like just that their years and years of development and what they've got going on from grassroots up. Like, when you look into what France is now, instead, and it's just that, like, what their domestic league is doing, how hard it is for their indigenous players to break into their own squads over the likes of retired Australians and New Zealanders that have been bought in, and then you're trying to pick. You can only really pick from the pool of the ones that maybe are getting game time. And
to be fair, there are more French lads getting game time in the top tours than there were
a couple of years ago, sure. But it's just it seems a pretty chaotic system, and there's no surety in it, and there's no focus.
It's an attitude problem, as much as it's a money problem, and that those Boujalal introduced issues and Top Couture's Eleanor issues are there. Like, I just think from the national side's perspective, it's just an attitude problem. They just haven't figured out how to be professionals.
Or what that means in the modern game, because there's still a romantic element to it of just the breaking ball and the jouer concept, which is not going to cut past.
You'd say they need a Michael Cheika to focus them, but then when Michael Cheika was in Stade, the players rebelled instead of listening to him, and that typifies
exactly
what
the
French
difference
rugby is. And these two games, like as good as they were to watch, as flowy as they were, like they weren't at the level that you would expect from a test match level. Like the All Blacks never got out of second gear. You can say they look bad, and I know All Black fans that might rub them the wrong way. They're still they're still the best team in the world.
Some of the talk I've heard is now like they just off the back of summer, and now this is that the rest of the teams are making leaps and bounds and strides, and they're kind of plateauing is one of the
it's one way to look at it.
It is certainly, but it's just I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think they do play with what's in front of them, the All Blacks, a lot of the time, and sometimes in games, even if it not overall, but there are periods in games when they can get settled into just playing what's in front of them, and they can kind of break their flow a little bit, and that was kind of what happened in that second half as well. They're getting a little too passive, getting a little too used to just going through the motions and getting these tries, and then when that doesn't start to happen, a little slow to react.
They're eminently more beatable. Whether you want to attribute that to them or to other teams, they're eminently more beatable than they have been in the last couple of years, than they certainly were in the World Cup year. They have the luxury though of being comfortably better than the entire Southern Hemisphere to start. So their whole regular season, they're comfortably better than their opposition. I don't know who they're playing next summer. I'd be interested to find out. Actually, I think we should find out the summer tours for next year. But it could be, if it's someone like Wales, it could be like, again, because there's no Lions tour this year, it could be November before they get a tough game again next year. Yeah. So
that's no good, as we were highlighting about the Lions.
Aussies are challenging, which is good.
During the Super Bowl, you need consistent challenges for it. But it's kind of what's beneficial now, I find, is that everyone's playing the same game as the All Blacks, at least now, because there were periods a couple of years ago, certainly in the Rugby Championship, where it just looked like these are worlds apart. Like one of these things is not only not like another, but it's just completely far removed. When you're watching the Aussie versus Argentina clash, or South Africa v Argentina sometimes, and then you just watch what New Zealand are doing a few years ago, and then when they were going through their unbeaten season, it was a little bit doom and gloom, certainly from the Northern Hemisphere's point of view, when we're outside looking in, and then whenever the All Blacks got a chance to pop against one of our teams, they just trounced us too. It was a little bit like, what is one to do? Now it feels like people are understanding, evolving, learning from the All Blacks and the example they set, but also the focus on finding spaces there. Like we were talking about the lessons of the last World Cup, and have they been forgotten, and the short-term memories that exist in rugby. And it feels like there's an across the board an appreciation for finding space and finding tries to win games.
True,
and that's probably where this gulf is being eroded away, because there are still like we've always known that there are classy players in the Northern Hemisphere who are great as well, but it just feels like a misplaced focus was what caught them out in the last World Cup. Now the rising tide raises all boats. I do get the
sense that a lot of these countries are thinking really about 2019. They're thinking about the World Cup, and that's why this.
But there's wisdom in that. Like that wasn't always the case as well. That was another frustration, but in World Cups gone by, is like, but we need to win the Six Nations. The misplaced focus on the Six Nations and hard-nosed Six Nations and summer tours, but just before the World Cup. And you're going well, hang on, what? Why are we focused on this?
But certainly at 2 years out, I certainly don't think the All Blacks are the finished product. They're certainly the best in the world, certainly the favourites for the next World Cup, but the gap is narrowing, and there's just...
You're talking about centres was one of your issues they have a work on now.
I think we've mentioned that before, that I think their centres aren't great. I think Sonny Bill, again, we could talk about that moment.
Actually, he had a performance that kind of typified that point that we made in the last podcast about the centres, where the little stab through for Crotty's try, great, lovely play, some good offloads in there as well, right? And he's very physical always, good defending, and then he has that insane moment where he gets himself caught, and it's like he'd been playing this game for 5 years.
To my mind, they're missing out on a distributor in there. It was interesting to see them try Goodhue in the midweek. Worked a little bit, and their offense took a different look to it. But in general, they're sticking with Sonny Bill and Crotty, and I just don't know how wise that is. As good as Sonny Bill is, like in that Australia game that they lost, I know he was the guy who made the play when their attack looked completely stalled. He was the guy who made something from nothing and got an extraordinary offload away. Which is why I wouldn't eliminate him from the squad, but maybe even as a bench impact he could be interesting. But as far as starting him is concerned, too often he blows up in your face. It happens, like now it's happened twice this year. In the Lions tour it happened, and then it happened this week with his ridiculous bat of the ball into the dead ball zone. It's like, it's an absolute brain fart of a moment, and if you have a guy on your team who consistently does that, it's going to be a problem. And you don't know. It could be fine. Sonny Bill looking good, Sonny Bill an integral part of the player, and then in a World Cup quarter or semi-final, it blows up on you.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's a very high risk call with Sonny Bill, because it doesn't look like he's learning like to think during matches quite as well. Like he does lose it from time to time. It's a lesser extent of a Dylan Hartley problem. It's just every so often he blows up and makes a huge mistake. Yeah. So
how much can you have him as a fulcrum in that team?
Exactly.
Rather than spread through the squad. And there are a few other points on that, like Cruden is gone now, and Bowden, in the absence of Bowden, there's a sea of just nowhere near that level in that 10 jersey.
Well, this is where the 2 years thing comes.
That's exactly it. And it's the same. And then the other one is second row, is the point I was going to make as well, because in the second row, once you remove Brodie Retallick, as much as you do have Sam Whitelock and you have some great players, like they have 2 years now for those players to step up their game significantly to the level of where probably Brodie's at currently, because Brodie will probably have gone on
as much as we talk about the centres. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
But as much as we talk about the centres, I think the pack is the biggest drop off we've seen from the All Blacks relative to the other opposition, to the extent that you would say like perhaps England and Ireland's packs aren't just like up there with them. They might even have a stake to being better than them. Certainly in the second row, I would say England have them. In the back row, I would say Ireland perhaps have them. I certainly think like they haven't figured out exactly what they want from their back row. Kino is very much going through the motions on the field these days. Sam Cane the same. Kieran Reid doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Kieran Reid's still classy. But you're like, there's definitely stuff to be figured out, but it's not doom and gloom. Like they have such a player base, and the players that they have now currently, even though there's a little drop off in talent, like you're talking about when Romano and Scott Barrett maybe are in the second row instead of some of their main figs. Like
you go on.
Well, like if this happens at the moment, currently there is a noticeable drop off in intensity and physicality and just the overall level and efficiency of their pack. But there are 2 years for those players. Like it's not a slide on those players. Those players just have 2 years to develop to get themselves up to that level.
And that's what I think. Like the beautiful thing about New Zealand rugby is that every year in Super Rugby there's another young lad who appears absolutely class. And that's what I think is the fate of Luke Romano's jersey. There is that eventually, assuming Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock, if they're perhaps injured, but their cover being Romano and Barrett. Like Barrett is a guy who has the potential to be a superstar. He's just young, and Romano really isn't. Romano is going to be replaced by some young, classy All Black, and that's why, like, that's the beauty of the country, because when they have a player or a position that's a problem, it gets filled very quickly by talent. They have talent, and that's why they're obviously still favourites. They just need to put it together, and at the moment it's not quite put together. It's like they're doing enough to win, but it's not what it could be. And it hasn't been
probably hence the misgivings that people have had, like certainly that Kiwis that I've heard have had about some of the results they've had this year.
And that was with 6 wins in the rugby.
Indeed, this is
not their biggest
dominant display. And it's so like looking from the outside in, they are still the front runners for the next World Cup, of course, and still champs. And it's like these are top level problems that you're talking about. These are just addressing.
Those 2 games against France were they really did irritate me just as kind of nonsense.
It's hard to kind of pick a narrative out of it, really, even and not that people won't try.
Just enjoy it, because all France were getting from it, like it really did strike me like a lot of this tours is just like a money making exercise. Like there was just a kickabout. Like that's what it looked like to me anyway. It looked like a kickabout, and the same with the Barbarians game the week before. It's like the All Blacks and the Maori are going 90 during this end of year tour, playing match after match after match after match, because they want the money. They want they're getting paid to come and play in these places. It's all about getting money.
Revenue. As such, we'll excuse a little bit of disjointedness and a little bit of fatigue maybe in some of those performances. But we'll move on, because there were other class games as well that happened.
For sure,
what was it? Wales lost, but positively, it seems, from the reaction.
I would say so.
Like certainly a new look Wales, and new look Wales with distributors.
The Renaissance has come 400 years too late for Warren Gatland. The Enlightenment has reached the man. For sure. I mean, he's realised that Warren Ball, his sort of philosophy on rugby, isn't what he thought it was, certainly.
Or maybe it's just outdated.
We never had a chance of going that far, and he's recognised it. He's looking at the game, and he's just getting weary with all the criticism, because it was something that we said about him, and we almost felt, obviously this is pre-podcast here, but we would talk and say, like, we almost said,
but even in the podcast that we were having pre-Lions tour, there was a fair bit of that was going on as well. We were always discussing
but to be fair, we were talking during the years that Wales were good, 2012, 2011, that kind of era. We were saying that there's a limited nature to what he was doing, but everyone was giving him a ride. But that just ceased to be true. Everyone was criticising him. By the time the Lions tour rolled around, everybody was criticising him. Everybody was saying what he was doing was outdated. They'd already lost Wales had anyway with the same system, even without Galland in the Six Nations, to Scotland and these teams, and it just looked like it was passing them by. And then there's the Ben Teo-isms in the Lions tour, and they were losing to the Blues and drawing with the Highlanders, I think, and and it just looked terrible, and they were getting a right slagging from the Kiwi press and just got fatigued by it. And apparently one of the things that happened on the Lion tours, they did start, Sexton and Farrell did start sort of running through it themselves and sort of divorcing themselves from Rob Howley and what he was doing a little bit, or at least Rob Howley was giving them license to sort of think a little more and run a little more, and then they started selecting them together, and then all of a sudden rugby started happening, and they ended up getting a great result out of it. And that's credit to Gatland for allowing that to happen, and it's credit to Gatland that he seems to have realised it. It's why I was very silent when you were saying hopefully Gatland's gone. Is Gatland still there? I was like, well, we'll see, because it seems to me like the signs are that he's learning, he's thinking.
Learning. Sure.
And then that's fine, then he's as good as anyone else. I mean, you have to get an elite, if you want to replace him, you have to get an elite coach in to replace him. So for this tour, 2 distributors was the interesting thing for me.
Williams, a new Williams in the centre.
Yes,
more Williams everywhere, and it was class. They were passing the ball around, had an entertaining game. Australia looked the more mature team, which is exactly what they are. And a few little moments, Kirtley's little strip and go was a class little moment, but there were certainly a few telling impacts on the game, and like things like maul, they did score a maul try straight away. They're just a little bit more efficient than this Wales outfit, but you will pardon that, and that was the response to the game was just like, it was good to see Wales playing rugby again, because there were some of those sweeping movements that you were making the point is like it looked very Scarlets-esque, and that's why we were bemoaning the fact that it wasn't happening in a Welsh jersey, is that the Scarlets have always had that in their arsenal, and as much as they won the league last year off the back of getting a bit more of a spine to that team, they had a class back row, they were more attritional. But in years gone by, even in Europe, they were very prone to not having the grit to string results together. But they can go to France and score 4 or 5 tries against a team randomly in the pool games. So it's great to see players like Jonathan Davis off the back of that Lions tour giving a little more.
Jay Davis loves it.
Yeah,
he loves that game.
He's playing the rugby now. He's doing the rugby now. He's instead of having to crash in head first with that little scrum cap bullet first, like no need for it. Like he's much better in the wider channels with ball in hand, and he links very well. He throws a good pass off either hand to link up with some danger that they do have out wide. So like
Williams and Steph Evans, hell of wingers.
Indeed, like they can grab scores, and they did in this game too. And I hope he sticks with it, because this weekend as well they have like, I don't know, they like it'll be a curious test. We'll probably get on to talking a little about it later on, but it'll be a curious test for Gatland's mettle. It's like, do you stick with it or do you go back to type, which is like,
well, I think we're going to have that conversation a lot in the coming years, because as much as it was good to see from Wales the the expansive nature of their game, it was certainly refreshing. It was also there was issues on the field with some of the personnel, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. Certainly talent wise, they're just like, a lot of those young forwards they have are certainly not at international level yet. I don't know if you can get them there, if you can like pull the magic spell that the Michael Cheika pulled on Adam Coleman and Rob Simmons to turn them from average into great. But like, generally speaking, there were issues in the team. There were also issues with Faletau and Halfpenny specifically, like stalwarts in his team. He absolutely, like, they're integral to everything that he has done in the old form of Welsh rugby. Didn't seem to handle the pace well at all. Faletau, I think 4 handling errors that I saw, really egregious, probably cost them the match. Halfpenny not attacking with the same fluency on counter-attack, missing a couple of options to link up with the super wingers. And
these are
from that
always been
perspective, these are going to be issues.
Yeah, those have been doubts we've had about those players specifically for years, but it's coming from a perspective of playing this kind of rugby.
Faletau is playing well for Bath this year. Bath look good, but Bath are slower, and the same is true for Rhys Priestland, and a lot of these Welsh guys are actually in Bath. There's a good few Welsh players in Bath, but they're playing a slow, like, controlled physical game, much more similar to what Gatland has been doing. And I think it's going to be interesting, because if he does persist with it, these issues are going to crop up, because for me it's a 2-year project at least to get the whole country invested in it.
Like if you're not playing that week in week out, you're not fit enough to go the pace of a game that's played at that tempo.
It's almost like different kinds of fitness as well, because that Welsh team have always been fit enough to make tackles from here
for days. But running back and forth and left and right and across the pitch and just making every play intense and quick and kind of frenetic, and that's why like those halfbacks that they have now are so conducive to that. They play both of them. They play with that snappy pace, decisions instantly made, which is what leads to them making a few wrong decisions sometimes. They certainly don't have like the level-headed assuredness of a Conor Murray that we would have, but they do have that pace and that intensity, and that's why they shift a lot of their responsibility onto their 10, which is a jersey that's kind of still up for grabs.
Bigger the incumbent, but Patchell and Priestland would certainly be asking for it. It's interesting.
They do have options there. But they have options everywhere. This is it. Like, this has been the frustration for years, is that they've always had good talent, and they've always had an ability and an instinct for scoring tries, like we were crediting France with a while ago. Like when the ball breaks and there's chaos ball, they can all finish it off. There are 21-year-old kids in Cardiff who can finish it off.
But I mean, back in the day, certainly maybe this was something to do with the style, but when it was a second string team during the Lions years, Wales would often go off to summer tours against tier 2 nations and lose, like they did against Japan a few years back. True. I think their strength and depth is definitely better now. A second string Welsh team looks better than it has done.
I think there'll also be a renewed focus, in terms of what we were talking about with Ireland, and England as well. Just like less of a responsibility on the first team, or less of a focus on, this is my first team. Which Gatland Ball or Warren Ball or whatever certainly always had that. Like, these are the players. This is my captain. This is the thing. Like, these are the guys.
True,
and then they were trying to win tournaments all through that. And then you get to the summer tour and it's like, right, well, we have these other lads as well. So this is also technically Wales, but they haven't been playing together at all. They don't even have an identity.
For years and years, you could list that same Warren Gatland team off. The exact same group of players, the exact same everything. You know, you could. It's other than the front row, which was constantly changing. It was like Hibbert at 2, and then 2 new props. But then other than that, it was Charters with Jones, Lydia, Warburton, Falatau, Rhys Webb, or Mike Phillips back in the day. Then someone at 10, usually Dan Bigger, and then Roberts, Davis, Halfpenny, Cuthbert, and North, and that was the Welsh team for years and years and years and years and years. And now you're seeing a much broader base, all ball players, all thinking about the game, and they're all hopefully going to get invested behind this new idea of playing with 2
and involved, so that they're being picked, and in games and in tours like this, they get a chance to show, and not only show what they can do, but also just get gelled, so that there are maybe 30 teams who are all, or 30 players who are all in the Welsh team.
The big question mark for me is like, who from that bunch, especially in the pack, is going to step up and be an elite level player? Who's their elite level back rower? Because if you're Welsh and you're answering Warburton or Falatau, I question that right now. I really do. Like, if you're comparing this to Ireland as your neighbours, not to be smug or anything, but like Tadhg Furlong, who's your Tadhg Furlong in the front row? Who's that guy who's bursting on the scene? Who's your elite scrummager like Cian Healy? Where's your Sean O'Brien? You know, where are these guys who are not only just physically up for it, but really, really elite level players? And the same, Murray and Sexton. It's not quite there. Your wingers are elite, and Steph Evans, I think, certainly has the potential to get there. But as good as they are, they're all test level. There's like maybe even 30 Welsh test level players. I wonder, are they going to be good enough to step up to the elite level? And I certainly think it's going to be a long process of getting them there. So if they go into the Six Nations with this style and get curbed, get beat out the gate by a very mature Ireland and England and even Scotland team, are they going to give up on it? Are they going to panic? Are they going to sack Gatland? What's going to happen? Because I think they would drown themselves if they did that, or at least ride off this World Cup cycle. Or are they going to keep the faith and hope that they can get them right for the World Cup at the expense of probably a year's worth of competition?
Yeah, true enough. And then to flip that, Australia finishing off their tour very well. They're getting, like, this has been a great year now. This is like such a U-turn from what we were discussing about Aussie rugby at the start of summer.
All those concerns still linger in the background.
I know, because they've always been there, but it still just remains the case that they're 30 best rugby players in Australia are all so skillful,
they're
so
also
class.
playing above their station with Warren in there, with Czech.
Czech has got them like a well-oiled machine. I think they're probably the best team in the world in terms of their efficiency off exit and their efficiency off setting up a maul quickly. I think
they're a little bit lacking in their discipline in this game, especially just in terms of penalties conceded.
Yeah.
It was a little worse than it has been.
A bit more ragged.
But certainly in general this year that has been the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, and that's a new dimension that is pure Czech. Like, it's Czech's fingerprints all over it, because before his arrival, if you recall, it was always like the flaky Aussie team who, like, you could look at like two clips from the same game side by side and think this is the best team ever to play the game, and then you look at something else that happened and you're like, oh right, flaky nonsense going on, drop balls today. So it's been a wonderful addition, and he has a great balance now. And Kirtley is still the fulcrum. Kirtley at fullback, Kirtley at 12, Kirtley at 10, Kirtley at 9. It would probably be class.
Genny at 9 is
Genny at 9's doing a great job. He's renewed his game, because
there was another killer pass in that for the first try. I think it was Coleman got it.
Yeah, this flat ball across the line,
lovely,
and finding that little space. Yeah, he's quick and sharp, and he also seems to be one who's growing his game as well. He's watching your Aaron Smith, watching those things go down.
Certainly a different iteration than the Genia that originally burst onto the scene in 2011.
Roaming
around with ball in hand. You almost don't have the liberty to do that anymore. You don't get smashed.
Yeah.
But he was running with the ball and threatening the line from the base of the ruck, which he doesn't do nearly as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And yet his passing quality is still excellent. So that's a big adjustment for a young scrum half to make.
And he's slotted in as like an absolute fulcrum, which is good, because Phipps, who was the incumbent before during those Genia years of lost form, we're always looking at Phipps going like, well, this is nowhere near as good as what Genia was doing for them.
Huge concern if Beale or Genia get injured.
Yeah.
Like, again, the issue with Aussie rugby is that there still isn't that depth. So I think if Genia or Beale get injured, or even dip off form, although it doesn't look likely the way Czech has them going, like it is a massive concern for them. The other thing that they were doing in this game, they didn't have a lot of the ball, so obviously they defended okay to only concede 21, but a couple of times they were caught narrow, which hasn't been like them, and they were caught drifting just a little bit, and which is not what you usually expect, especially in the middle of the park. They were giving up yards to the Welsh, which isn't what you'd expect from them against the All Blacks. There was a tigerish nature to what they were doing off the ball, and it certainly was lacking. But they just, again, they like to play footy in the Millennium Stadium, and they weren't quite as sharp as they would need to be for a competitive match against the All Blacks. But still, a comfortable win.
Good enough for what is a new look Wales side. But it's exciting. It's exciting because I'm curious to see now this weekend what Wales persists and what will end up happening, because Georgia, who we've been kind of blowing the trumpet about on this podcast, if anyone's been watching, like, they're dangerous and they're coming to the Millennium Stadium.
We'll talk about that. But Australia obviously having to go to Twickenham as well. We'll get to that.
That's scary. That is the game of the entire tour. Now that we didn't get to see England All Blacks, didn't get to see Ireland All Blacks, so.
Which is one of the reasons why the tour is so lacking in intensity. Is that for the case of 3 of the world's top 4 teams,
they're not playing each other.
Well, England actually are having a game against Australia, so 2 really. Ireland and New Zealand are 2 of the world's top teams, and neither of them are going to hit top gear because neither of them are having a real big test. So it's like, for both of them, it's really just getting systems right, getting formations right. Let's see what our team looks like.
Players
let's see what our teams look like, and it's one of the reasons why the tour is taking a more lethargic, I would say, feel to it than your average end of year tour or autumn internationals.
And you can, like, talking about that line speed and such, and just intensity overall. A runabout seems to be.
Well, that certainly was the case for. I think this match was really great watch, but it was lacking in intensity. Wales Australia, and I think the same is true of the All Black France match. It wasn't played at the same intensity. To Ireland and the Springboks' credit, not that you'll hear many people giving the Springboks credit.
Come on, Ireland. That's what I'm going to point at.
Yeah,
because
but to both of their credit, this game did have an intensity.
It did, and off the bat, people they were trying to be attritional. One of the first things that happened, the first thing that happened, was South Africa spinning into the middle, try and bulldoze their way over the top, and got hit, smashed.
So I think we could start by talking about Ireland, and then we'll get to talking about South Africa, because I definitely take issue with some of the narratives that have just come out over the last week in regards to South African rugby. Some really superficial analysis has been done that pisses me off. And it's also like a little jab in Ireland, like, oh, you lost by 35 points to Ireland, I guess you're shit. You lose by 35 points to the All Blacks, the All Blacks are amazing. And I'm not saying Ireland are as good as the All Blacks, but Ireland were pretty good in this game.
Yeah.
And for a lot of this game, it was, in my mind, a real arm wrestle between elite level packs. The difference really being that Ireland's halfbacks were exploiting and controlling the game, whereas South Africa's All Blacks were just blowing it.
Halfbacks.
Halfbacks. Did I say All Blacks?
You did.
No.
South Africa have no All Blacks.
South Africa's All Blacks. Excuse me.
But yeah, their halfbacks were just frenetic and kicking the leather off the ball, but not even chasing it, and it was rudderless stuff. And then once their pack got smashed as well,
but their pack was going toe to toe with ours for a bit. I mean, the first 2 penalties were very good from Ireland. They got them very well. The third one was a bit of a lucky one.
Yeah, because Ben O'Keefe shouted ball out, play on, then kicked the ball out of the ruck. Then
Khaleesi kicked the ball. He says, ball is out, play on. Khaleesi goes, right, I'll have a fly hack. And then he goes, kick the ball out of the ruck.
Strange one. But we'll take it. Chip it over for 9-0.
Like,
that always happens though. That's one of those things, because it's a new directive. They're
just excited to get it.
Exactly.
It's like you have to explain that to them. Once the ball is out of the ruck, you are allowed to kick it because it's open play. You're not allowed, actually, one of the niche rules, you're not allowed to jump on a ball once it's just come out of the ruck. That counts as diving on the ball or something, killing the ball or some weird rule. Even if you're onside, if the ball comes out the base of a ruck, you're not allowed to dive on it. But you are allowed to fly hack it, and that's not changed. You're not allowed to fly hack it if you're in a ruck and it's in a ruck. But you're not, and he wasn't. So he came through and kicked it and got pinned for 9-0, which was a really bad call, but didn't have a real effect on the game. But in general, that first half, Ireland were on top and they were winning the pack exchanges, but South Africa had a lot of the ball. Ireland were just playing the ball in the right parts of the field.
Yeah, one big overlap that Dialindi butchered, which was a chance for a game on time, but it was not.
They really butchered it. We will get to that, but they really did miss Serpentine in there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Ireland were defending them. Andy Farrell's defence, almost it's the biggest change in what this Ireland team have done. They're very different, just in terms of not just in terms of structures, just in terms of instincts. Everything has changed. The instinct is no longer to sort of drift and go back if you're in trouble. There's much more license to shoot. So some players are shooting. Stockdale shooting. Like kill the move. Oh my God, we're in trouble. How do we kill this move? And that was like a couple of times late in the game. Dylan Lath had a 2-on-1 and Stockdale took a shoot and smashed him. And that was happening more and more. Aki was shooting, Henshaw was shooting, and
it's better for just the mold, like we've discussed before, about like teams having an ethos and an ethic, and also just an instinctive way of playing that like sometimes certain coaches don't blend with it because they have a different idea for what you want. Ireland being a passive line in defence makes no sense. When traditionally the way we do win when we do get big scalps against the big teams, it's by fronting up and being as physical as we can possibly be, and near superhuman displays of physicality sometimes. And like the shooting, hitting, smashing in your face defensive style is much more just aligned with that way of thinking than kind of passively being standoffish and doubtful, which is what got us in trouble the last World Cup. So it's important and good to see those lessons learned.
And it wasn't one of those occasions where they were just superhuman in the mood. Like it was a very structural thing. And one of the other things that the line was doing, as well as having this shooter mentality, they were keeping their discipline and they were keeping their width. So that was very encouraging to see. The Springboks, again, almost in response to that, for a bit tried to punch in through the middle and just got nowhere, and that's partly to do with the Springboks, but very much partly to do with Ireland's great defensive performance. And it really was. And again, the only narrative, people love a good tear down, and the Boks need tearing down in a lot of ways, but certainly the simplistic narratives that are derived from that, as per the Boks being awful and Ireland not having to do much, aren't necessarily grounded in truth. They're grounded in the 3 tries that Ireland found in the last minutes. For the most part, Ireland were professionally doing a job on a team that they're better than, and that's hugely encouraging, because that Springbok pack bullied the All Blacks a few weeks ago. Ireland, that Irish pack could be considered the best in the world right now. Certainly England, if you want to compete, if you want to compare, that front row needs work.
We'll get on to England. I was depressed with watching that the England game. We'll get on to it in a sec now, but because England do have an elite level pack. This is the thing, like when you're talking about, like, from that pool of players, there is a pack that can be picked that is one of the best in the world, but they weren't picking it. But Ireland were, and Ireland have a few other players who are just below that as well. Their depth in that pack too, which is just very encouraging to see. But there was a dynamism and a focus, and as well there was tacticalness. Like, we targeted them in some good key areas. We found space, targeted those wingers. high ball. It's not complicated stuff, which is why like, I can see where the narrative was fed through this. Like, it wasn't anything particularly complicated, but when you're lined up with those kinds of things and you're looking at this South Africa team, and it's what we've been doing all summer, looking at like, well, there's an elite pack, that's going to be trouble, we'll have to front up there. And then you're looking at the halfbacks, well, there are some club level players there, let's target that. And then you're looking at the wings, which is where I've been looking. Lades now has impressed me of late. Skassan had a poor game. He was targeted as well we should have.
And gave up a try
that looked, as a friend of mine put it, it was schoolboy. It was schoolboyish in nature, and just the kind of weird freak the little grab. I liked the dynamic of it, the whoop thing, but it was just
Malcolm Marks turning.
Well, it was not his fault. Even though he was providing that little moment, the little Buster Keaton kind of perfect visual comedy right there. But it was like yoink and into the corner. But it was a result of just good tactical play. Like your awareness, we're mauling, we're going to just drop a bomb into the 22 because we're on Skassan's side, and he has revealed himself too often to be just, but not only not at the level, but way below the level of elite level World Cup winger, which Ireland did a great job of exploiting. The other thing that Ireland did that really pleased me, again, like just looking like the All Blacks. I mean, we're not the All Blacks, but one of the cool things that the All Blacks do every year is have this kind of, when they beat a team, it's a close match, and then once the team are beaten, they start lining up the tries, and the tries are often scored by debutants. Debutant wingers off the bench.
Or not even the debutant winner. It starts to happen this year with Rico in his first game. We bully, and then Rico gets in, and that's sort of what Ireland did in this game. Rob Herring getting the maul try, and then Stockdale getting that worldie of a try. Stockdale looked awesome all day.
He looked very, very good, and it's so refreshing to see, and it's a little bit annoying in what we've selected this week in response to it, but our main criticism of this Joe's Ireland team is, like, as much as like when we're talking about New Zealand, it's centres. For us, it's back three. The utility of the back three is why we were among those people who were bemoaning the selection of Carney, because we're Leinster fans, and we're not like, and we'll be very cross now in a couple of weeks' time if Carney's slotting in at 15 for Leinster, because Carberry is Leinster's 15, and that's just the way we play the game, is with Carberry at 15, section of 10, and it represents a different perspective. But it was great to see those two wingers, Conway, Munsterman now, former Leinsterman, but Munsterman's like playing
Blackrock Munsterman.
But the two boys looked very at home in their green jerseys, and they looked just a step above, certainly when you had their opposite numbers there, but they looked, just their instincts were all good. They were dying to get their hands on the ball, and we were dying to feed them as well. Like in the first half, Bundy Aki was throwing a few flat over the top passes, not quite on the money, but they were nearly on the money. They were the right pass.
It was really good, and the right option to pick like a half pitch long pass to Conway, because obviously Skassan is
somewhere else, anywhere else,
playing with a butterfly somewhere.
He's there on his Game Boy.
So Bundy Aki was looking for that pass. It was a really minute criticism of mine. It was like it's just not quite Owen Farrell.
Not everyone's Owen Farrell. Exactly. Owen Farrell's up for Player of the Year.
I'd like to see Owen Farrell,
and he's deserving of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I like that we're seeking that option, that we're trying to utilise our wingers, because for too often in Joe's teams it's been very systematic in the way we've scored tries, and we haven't had a capacity, and we haven't seemed to be selecting wingers. Like, we've lined up with a back three of two Carneys and a Trimble before. In the green jersey, which is just like, that's not going to grant you any kind of spontaneous tries.
It's minimising your weapons. But certainly, for the most part, Ireland finding tries, great to see, and great to see them really step the foot on the neck and create that 35 point score that was a 14-point score.
It was actually Marmion coming on, as great a game as Conor Murray had. Marmion and Carberry coming on just up that tempo, and then
just finishing them off,
and the forwards added that dynamism. Some of those, like after the initial break with the inside ball to Stockdale, that was lovely, but then those two phases thereafter, it was Ryan getting over the gain line.
It was just two phases. It was just Stander and then Ruddock. Stander, then Ruddock, and Ruddock scored.
I'm thinking of the other, for the Stockdale try, there was the great carry by Ryan in the mid thing, where he got caught behind the gain line and fought forward, and it's those little impacts and that little impetus was great to see in terms of planning. And
just a nice flow. Even earlier in that move for the Stockdale try, there was a great carry from Sean O'Brien off the base that just got forward, and just mixing it up and playing what's in front of you, which that try was great for, because for the most part, still most of Ireland's moves and most of Ireland's tries are still painted by Joe, and we even saw that with the first try, the Ruddock try. That was very much a Joe Schmidt craft.
Well, when you think back,
it's like we played 2 screen balls and then an inside ball from Sexton, and we'll catch it.
Well, when you think back to where we were a few years ago when we were playing South Africa, this exact fixture from how long? What year was it? It was a few years ago.
Almost every year.
Yeah, but it was
2014. We beat them.
Yeah, but I think that's the one I'm thinking of, where it was maul try from Ruddock.
2014.
2014, and then the kick to Bow over the top. After it was one of those 3 points, 6 points, 9 points try. Then a lot of back and forth, and then a try.
Yeah,
and that's the game. Whereas this took a similar look in terms of the game. The packs were competitive and they were stalling us as well at times, and we weren't finding all the tries that we wanted.
Yeah,
but we were just the more reactive. We were controlling the game much more. Like, this is when faced with adversity, this South African team with those halfbacks just. Yeah, they kick the ball away.
And I suppose we can talk about that now, because for the most part Joe Schmidt very much strike plays, still needs to work in that attacking instinct. It was great to see them do that for a try. As far as Ireland in general are concerned, consistency is the big question, so you just don't know. That pack we were saying is the best pack in the world on its day, and I really do think when they do play on their day, they are actually slightly better than England and France. No, France, the All Blacks. England and the All Blacks.
I think they're much better.
They're much better than France, but they're definitely better than England and the All Blacks on their day. So when England come to Dublin looking for a Grand Slam, Ireland show up, Ireland beat them. Ireland beat the All Blacks up front the last few times they've played, apart with the exception of that one match in Dublin last year,
where we did get bullied.
But the last two matches before then, they beat them up front. Where the All Blacks have the advantage, obviously, is just their try finding.
Yeah, they find more tries than us and score more overall.
Significantly better, and that's one of the All Blacks are a more balanced team for sure. But in that pack area, Ireland on their day are elite, but sometimes they fade. Sometimes Rory Best just decides he can't throw the ball. Sometimes Ian Henderson takes nights off. Sometimes O'Mahony and Stander just give away penalties. And then it all falls apart. And that's what you have to hope doesn't happen. And you hope that this discipline that seems to be evolving around the team is maintained. And that's the real question mark. It seems to be a less attritional game plan. So less of those excuses about having off days when you're tired. We'll see going forward. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. As for South Africa, I think we heard a lot about it. It was a pretty abysmal performance overall. But like they need to, things need to change, starting with the halfbacks. That's my take on it. Like they need to get rid of those, because they have Pollard, they have options there. They have great halfbacks like Pollard and Faf and Pollard. What a combo that would be right there. And like you can have there's Kobus Reinach if you want to start him and have Faf on the bench, much better option.
That's my thought.
But the guys that are there, like again,
Rory Page looked pretty good off the bench.
He did look energetic.
He did look pretty good.
Energetic.
Pretty good. Yeah, his passing was good. For my take on the Springboks, like the first thing I have to say is like every armchair Northern Hemisphere, I can't speak today, Northern Hemisphere journalist who's like saying, who's just now taking an interest essentially in South African rugby, all have these opinions on why they are the worst, they have faded, they've gone. Like, and I remember seeing there was a comment on YouTube under the highlights videos that I was just reading. It was like the top comment. It was like, "Oh, my 10-year-old just asked me why the Springboks are in the top 10 in the world, and I'm so sad that there's a kind of." I was like, "Well, your 10-year-old obviously didn't watch them draw against Australia twice this year. Your 10-year-old didn't see them smashing France and Argentina earlier in the year." So get your 10-year-old to watch more rugby, But that's my point. That's my point. Is like it's so superficial. It's so last week. What happened last week? They lost 57-0 to the All Blacks and 38-3 to Ireland. They're crap. They're Scotland. They're worse than Scotland. They're the worst team ever. They're USA. Get them out of the top tier. But like, it's not true. The other take that I saw that really irritated me was Stephen Jones from Stephen Jones, Welsh journalist, very loves himself and controversial. But his take on it, which isn't unreasonable, it's not a take that we mightn't have had, is that this is because they aren't selecting any of the players that are abroad. But then his overarching point there is that they don't have the talent at home, which is just not true. It's just not true. That pack that they have there, Beast and Tawira actually had a class game. Beast and Tawira got shafted a little bit at the scrum by the referee. He certainly wasn't Tig's when he wasn't having it all his own way. No. Especially after the first scrum, Tig got the push on him, and then Ben O'Keefe decided Tig was in front. But there was a good few occasions where Beast actually had him and didn't get his rewards. and the scrum was just like Healy winning and Beast winning and turning a little like this, and Tig was like almost the first to give in, and then it was like no penalty, just play on. So they got unlucky. Beast had a great game. Malcolm Marx is a potential superstar. They do have an issue at tight head, but in the second row they have no issues. They have no calls to go north to look for talent between Lou De Jager, between Evan Etzebeth, between Franco Mostert, between Peter Steff. Sia Khaleesi had a really poor game and disappointed himself, and sort of revealed again the Irish co-commentator, what's his name, the big the RTE co-commentator,
was it Lennon? Was it
Donald Lennon? That's correct. Yeah, he revealed his ignorance because he was going off and going like, again, it's just this skill set issue with South Africa. They're just making these mistakes, and you've guys like Sia Khaleesi who just doesn't have the skill set because he's never watched them play, and he's just seeing what's happening in front of him and guessing what the actual narrative is. And that's the thing. Sia Khaleesi, the most skilled player in South Africa this year, looking like earlier in the year when he was playing Super, he was looking like an outside shot for a World Player of the Year nomination. And now obviously he has faded a little bit in the last few weeks, and he played very poorly in that game.
There's only so long you can carry a team that's playing a game that's all physical. His skill set is not
an issue. As much as he played poorly, that's the narrative, like, oh, Sia Khaleesi's having an off day, this is a problem. Not Sia Khaleesi doesn't have a good skill set. Same at number 8 with Francois Lowe. You don't have an issue there. You just don't. They have, as far as I'm concerned, they have a few jerseys, a few players that they just have to replace, which are Cronje, Yankees, Skosan, and then...
But you bring in Reinach, Pollard, Combrink.
Done.
Suddenly there's a classy back line.
And then the other...
I know
the
also,
other thing,
Dale Lindy's not starting.
Dale Lindy's not Surfington. And then you have to bolster that squad from there. Obviously, you got to get rid of the Casims, and then you can put in some Northern players. They do have to select some Northern players, but the idea the idea that the domestic talent isn't there is nonsense.
Oh, that's the other jersey that needs to go is the coaching jersey.
The coaching jersey, and we'll get to what their coaching issues are, which is like why I think that they did lose by 35 points, as opposed to the narratives that are being chucked out there. Even as much as I despise the quota system, it's not the issue here. It's just not unless the quota system is what's keeping Yankees in a jersey, it's not the issue here. But going forward, that pack, that Springbok pack, and they've done this before, they've gotten hammered by teams and then gone on to do great things. That Springbok pack that started against Ireland could carry a team to a World Cup under the right coaching ticket
and the right halfbacks.
For sure, and there were elements of it, but there were elements that were missing. And the first thing that was missing, just from the whole perspective, the whole thing looks rudderless from a coaching perspective. But then the other things, they're just not using their bodies right. They're not intense enough. There's no shooting the defence. There's no popping the tackles. There's no attacking of the breakdown.
Individuality as well, like in things like their exits when they're receiving the ball on kickoff. They're very slow to exit. They're very painful. They're setting up the maul. Like, we were stifling their maul all the time, even though that's one of their go-tos. But there's just a little bit of laziness about the way they're doing it. It's just a little bit, not like what when you're watching Australia or Japan is another one who are like, because they're the slider guys. Japan are like, if they're doing a maul, they're instantly in maul position. Whereas with South Africa, it's a little bit more like, oh, we'll get the ball, we'll try and wrap around there, and it's easy to spoil if you're a pack like Ireland, which is like one of the other elite packs in the world, and you're up for the challenge. You're at home. You're going to have to be sharper than that, and they weren't.
Australia is an apt comparison because everything that Australia are doing right, South Africa are doing wrong. So basic things, getting your discipline to be right and getting your intensity to right and getting you all on the same page, all of that is missing. So the first thing,
and it was curious that they drew twice, because you're looking at
very different teams.
Like South Africa have a smorgasbord of talent between the players that are up north, the mercenaries up north, and the ones that are domestic. They have more players than probably most teams in the world. Australia have maybe 25 to 30 elite level players, but they're all polished, pristine, know their jobs, they're being efficient, and now they've been charted. They're progressing like this. They're on the upward slope, and South Africa have been dipping, and somewhere they met in the middle there this year and drew twice, which is amusing. But it's definitely like Australia have the ones to be more positive from those results. But South Africa, like, you're still talking about the ones to challenge the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship.
They have the players. And they got to use their bodies right. They got to be smarter about everything that they're doing. But the main issue with that pack, the personnel are not the issue. It's getting them right. It's getting them defending as a unit. It's getting them using their bodies better. If they used their bodies like those little Australians, like Sean McMahon uses his body, you can get Peter Steff to use his body like Sean McMahon uses his body.
Like Reece Ruddock did for that try.
Just the physical advantages that would give you are huge. So that's missing. Like there was a naivety in coming to Dublin and essentially setting your stall out and saying it like, we're going to take you on up front, we're going to ease back on that expansive game that we've been trying and take you on up front. Not how you play Ireland.
No.
And
as everyone knows.
And then they did that with that same sort of lethargic speed to their game, and absolutely got creased in every tackle. They just weren't winning the contact. Now you have to have a little bit more nous about you. Not many teams are going to win the contact playing like that against Ireland. Where are the offloads? Where are the
there
systems?
aren't many teams that are going to win the contact area in Ireland. That's like against Ireland. And there's got to be like, if you're playing against us, you're going to have to kick us around and move us around.
Get them tight, outside broken. Shoulder, that kind of thing. Find out where there are props in the line, where there are issues. How can you flat foot people? Get offloads into the game, and that's where the other problem comes in, which is replacing Jan Serpentine with Delindy. Delindy is the great mystery of the world at this point.
What is he doing there? Plugging and fucking it up.
Exactly. and then putting Andres Coetzee. Andres Coetzee is the man who typifies it for me. What a classy player he is for the Lions, and also he tries to be for the Box. Super sharp, super intelligent. Has
very
nothing
physical
to do,
as well.
Has nothing to do in that team. Nothing to do. He's moving at 1 mile an hour. He's deep. He's utterly disconnected from his backline. He occasionally comes in, but rarely as a distributor.
No,
never
on
the
for
inside.
A physical carry is normally
never on
you
the
see
inside.
him.
And then he gets the ball deep. He's alone. He can't really counterattack. He's got 3 players in front of him. He's got no wingers near him, and his kicking game is just choosing this long bomb, which is useless. His kicking game is awful, and it's so much better than that usually. And yeah, it was just a really classy player, not being used right, not being told, just operating on his own. You feel like he doesn't have a coach. Like he just doesn't train with the lads and then just shows up on the weekend and pops in at fullback. That's what Andres Coetzee looks like.
It looks like that, in terms of the aesthetic they're painting.
Entire distribution responsibility.
He should have been
a
first
receiver,
receiver
weak
more.
link.
And who never has challenged the line apart from those one maybe twice where he'll take a step on, and it's only when he fancies it, but he never commits the line, doesn't commit the line, stands deep and shifts it. And if your outside man is Delindy, you're going to see butchered overlaps, which is what we did see at the weekend, because muck and like against a very organised, disciplined and physical defensive line in what Ireland had. Like when you're looking at the centres opposite, like you have Yankees there, you're lining up against Sexton, Aki, Henshaw.
Hugely physical.
They are such a physical, like a daunting task, and you can see why Yankees is not going to challenge the line. And one of the things that Pollard did when he came on, it was that hit we mentioned earlier when Stockdale made that hit. The reason there was space there was because Pollard was challenging the line, got around on the outside, found Lades. It was just that fraction too late, and it was a good call a good read by Stockdale to close that out. But it was he created the space by taking us on. And the Yankees never was going to do that.
The other thing is Jesse Creel is another man who's operating in his own universe. And Jesse Creel, for me, has good vision, has good body, good turn of pace, reasonable eye for the game. Certainly can gel with Serpentine, and he's just operating in his own universe. Like again, very much like Andres Coetzee, and he's just like sliding on the outside, sliding constantly on the outside. Every time he gets the ball, taking like 2 steps to the outside, wondering what he's going to do before he gets wrapped up by Henshaw. And it's like, where is the thought? Who's coaching this team? And like, it's just absolute madness. It really is. And but as far as them being dead, no, it just needs, like, again, they got 2 years to do this. The question is, will politics get in the way? And that's still a question. So are they going to just go, no, Yankees, could see you, not good enough. Plenty of other people who might not be the same skin colour as you, good enough. Let's get them in.
Indeed.
That's the question. And if that doesn't happen, then you might be looking at a dead Springboks. You might be looking at a team that's so engulfed in politics that it can never be itself. But certainly that's not decided yet. And certainly the idea that the talent has all gone north and that there's just nothing left there
that's wrong.
is so superficial, it pains me. It pains me. And then you're talking like, well, Australia are just much better than Wales, and that's just the way it is. Well, Australia couldn't beat South Africa this year. So I mean, it's not true. It's not the full story.
No.
And Ireland did a great job of exposing their limitations and revealing to them what they are.
Which is what the same lesson that New Zealand gave them, that I was beaming on the podcast the week after, because I've been dying for this Springboks side to be taught that lesson.
The other thing,
I'm glad we've got it twice now.
The other thing that happens to them is they give up. At the moment, they're not mentally right at all, and they give up on games.
Etzebeth as captain,
Another problem.
He's not a captain. He's a lieutenant. He's your Donegal O'Callaghan who's next to Paul O'Connell. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's not the guy.
And he was that with Matfield for
years. But he's not Matfield.
Yeah.
It's wrong. He's too flaky. He doesn't wear the armband well
Maybe
at all.
We should get Matfield back.
Bring him back for the next World Cup. Yeah, 47 or whatever. It's grand.
He's calling the line out. It's just up there, loving life again.
Yeah.
No. They have talent. They do have
the talent there, but they need to find their right cap. They need a few needle roles. They need their captain, their out half, and their coach.
And their scrum half. Yeah, there's 5 jerseys in that starting team that can't go to a World Cup and 10 that can. And win a World Cup.
Yeah, and that's not doom and gloom. But
that's 2 years to get it right. Let's get off our holes. Razzie
is there. Let's get Kutsia out. We already have Venter there. There's good people. There are good people in South African rugby still.
They can surprise, and they might well surprise. We might have to get this clip on a loop by this time next year if they go and beat the All Blacks. Because
maybe they'll beat Japan in the next World Cup. Man, that would be amazing. Could you imagine if South Africa beat Japan? What a world that would be. No, but we'll I suppose we'll park it there because that's enough ranting. But come on, Ireland.
Yeah, it's like I try and do it when I have a genuine disagreement with like too many. I just have to, before we go on, I just think too many journalists in the modern game are just passengers in terms of what they're doing. There's journalists that are employed.
Ratings out of 10.
Yeah, they're just covering so many sports.
7 out of 10 for that winning prop there.
Exactly, but it's so superficial that it's just we look at South Africa, they lost by modes of points. They must be an awful team, and this is the problems. And now I'll look up, there's politics issues. This is the makings of a great article. The other thing, who's our man of the match? Who are our best players? Let's look at the stats. Most tackles, most carries. Look at this. This guy made such and such meters. Let's write that up.
But what about the plays? Who made the plays?
You're not seeing the whole game. I have no idea what Curtly Beale's statistics are this year. I have no idea. Does he make the most tackles? I don't know. But I'm watching him on the pitch make reads, shut down moves.
Or make moves. As he did at the weekend as well, strip and go.
But he did both there. He shut down the wide channel and then went the other end and scored. And that's the genius of the man. But the genius of the man is not that he made 20 tackles or whatever he made. And sometimes that is amazing. If there's genuinely amazing amount of tackles that one guy's just getting up and going, all right, and just
which does happen,
and that's fine to write about. But too many journalists are just missing the big picture. And there's another example that just after the South African match of just the litany of people declaring South African rugby dead and getting into these tired narratives about politics and etc. that are just missing the actual reality of it. The reality of it, what the actual problem is, how it can be better. No, it's dead. That's just very superficial. It really is.
Yes. We're just blowing off some steam up here on the podcast, but and there's more to come. We have some steam engines to come. But this is one of England Argentina. I don't want to linger too long on this game because it was just England won as they were going to. Argentina had a lot of the ball because England's pack were shite. Argentina had a lot of ball to play with, missed a load of kicks, didn't go for tries, even though it seemed like they were accepting that they were the inferior team, that they always get Twickenhamitis as well. They're another team that suffers for
kicks and missed them, went for pot shots and missed them the whole game.
And that was the whole game. And it was looking at that English pack, Dylan Hartley needs to go, Robshaw needs to go, Dan Cole's too old. But specifically Robshaw. Robshaw is one who, if you're English and are give him all kinds of credit, he's a player who I've looked at for years. And being a Leinster fans as we are, one of the things we've been inundated with is back row forwards. So we know the nuances, know the differences between, if we're going to stick at home, it's Josh van der Fleer, you're out and how Jackal. We have Rhys Ruddock, the big physical specimen, does well against the likes of the Springboks. Geordie Murphy, a bit more loose forward. Jack Conan, all of these are great options. I look at Chris Robshaw on the pitch and I just see him floundering. I see him trying to latch, getting peeled off immediately. I see him running around, bracing himself at the side of a ruck. I just don't see him contribute to the cause at all.
Yeah.
Bar one or two.
I don't think he's going to start going forward either. The Dylan Hartley one is the big mystery.
Yeah, he's not toxic. I think
more than that, he's not an elite level hooker.
No.
And Jamie George might well be the best hooker in Europe. Guys, wake up.
This is Eddie Jones. Class. Eddie Jones, who we do have a lot of respect, a lot of time for.
One of the things about this match is that Eddie Jones, he cares about beating Australia, and that's all he cares about this autumn. He's going to win the other games anyway, and Eddie Jones is thinking long term. He's thinking
they've got 5-year plans, 10-year plans.
Yeah. So he's picked this team, this hodgepodge team they put together. They're fine. They're going to beat Argentina. We're trying Slade at centre. It's interesting. We don't have an Owen Farrell.
Didn't quite work, but all right. Yeah.
Using those Sarri screens, seeing how they work. They didn't work that well. Their attack had no bite to it until Lazowski came on.
And he looked very good.
Yeah.
This is it. Like again, playing population-wise, England are in no bad way, and in that pack they're not in a bad way. It was just the selection this time round was a little bit peculiar. We were scratching our heads before the game, wondering how it would play out, and it ended up playing out as the scrappy affair that England were only feeding on. They didn't actually get dominance in the pack at all, which was strange against Argentina because they normally would.
Yeah,
but it was just it made for a
weird
game.
They defended
because we were looking at like Argentina with a load of ball with Hernandez instead of Sanchez at 10
and a new centre
partnership that hadn't been there before, and
it was like Matero and Santiago Iglesias. It's the first time I've seen an Argentina match for years without Orlando or De La Fuente in the centre. And Orlando in the centre. And as much as those guys are limited, Tuchel getting carded. Tuchel deserved to get carded.
He did. I like Tuchel though.
Tuchel seems to be fading from the season like Sia Khaleesi.
A little bit, but it's one of those things. How many times can you carry a team?
Played himself out of World Rugby nominee.
Yeah, but then when you look at what Curtly Beale has to do to not get into that, it's like what
that's the one that's
point,
truly madness.
Or Conor Murray.
Well, Conor Murray, But yeah, in general, England, this was not a test for them. Their defence held out against a weak team very impressively. They did fine, but for the most part, like they were giving away penalties and then were bailed out by the fact that Argentina didn't want to attack them. Yeah, so it was it was fine.
As far as like England are still motoring.
The Nathan Hughes try was a good try.
It was.
They found space.
Nathan Hughes is still not Billy Vunipola.
No.
He's big though.
Billy Vunipola is Billy Vunipola though, and he's gonna come back.
Yeah, he's gonna come back and grab his number 8 jersey.
Yeah,
and take it. So no, England are still in fine shape. Argentina, like Wales or like South Africa and things like we were talking about, this is now the impasse point, the end of this tour, next World Cup. So Argentina, wholesale change. The players are good. The Jaguares have good players. Argentina have good players. There's fixes needs to be happening. And just a new coach from a new place.
At least something new.
Ideally a Kiwi, but a new coach from a new place.
Well, if not a new coach, like a Stuart Lancashire introduction.
Ben Ryan.
Yeah, something like that. Some
Ben Ryan to move on from his Fiji experiment and sort these guys out.
The lad they have at the moment, they're like slowly drifting from the top tier.
Yeah, they are. And it's one of the, they always have this weird that Argentina, even though they're in the Rugby Championship now for the last few years, they never have seemed to be on the same kind of timeline with any other country as far as their peaks and their valleys. In terms of their performances.
Although they peaked for World Cups.
World Cups generally is the only kind of consistent bit of form that they seem to show.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe they probably will again, because looking at the players they have, they are dangerous, and they are a dangerous side potentially. Yeah. But at the moment, it's just too fatigued to game time. I mean, you're looking at Creevy again. How many times can a player carry a team? He wasn't the force that he so normally is in Twickenham again, because like an elite level player like that, who is a thinker about the game, wants to have his coach be the same. Wants to have his coach coming to him, challenging him to be better, challenging him to think differently. This seems to be.
Bail us out of it, Augustine.
Come on, Augustine, I need a big game from you. And it's just like, alright, coach, I suppose I'll do that again then.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like, too often is that the case. Their second rowers are a bit of penalty machines.
This is my point, is that you talk about the talent that's there. I don't see it up front. I don't think they have an elite test level pack anymore. And they're going to have to. There's grassroots stuff that's going to have to be done to find that between now and the World Cup. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's obviously possible.
Yeah, they still have a vested interest in rugby. I'm not doubting the game in Argentina. No. I don't think it's on the decline.
No,
that's not what I'm suggesting from a result like this.
Sorry about that. Seemed to stop working, but anyway, we're
back.
We're back. Everything's fine.
It's apart from Argentina. No. Argentina are.
I'm not sure how far in we got, but we were saying basically that they're not at the level.
No,
but they're fine.
Yeah. And they will be fine come next World Cup is kind of the point. I think they will. I think they're going to change their coach at the end of this.
But not looking like becoming a top team anytime soon.
Probably not.
Tier 1 team, probably they'll come back, but not a top team.
World Cup winners, no, probably not.
No, not this World Cup and not the next World Cup, but maybe you never know about the one after that. That's too long.
That's a generation of players at least away. But as far as the contest went, it was by the books, predictable, not the flashiest game that was on at the weekend. No. Nor was the next game that we're going to discuss briefly as well. Italy struggling against Fiji. Italy looked pretty good, but they couldn't score a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I thought
they struggled to score.
I don't like that narrative that Italy struggled against Fiji. Like, I was disappointed in Fiji for not beating Italy. Like, I think both sides should be way better than that. Fiji beat Scotland. I think this was like my least favourite match of the weekend because it really felt like an old school tier 2 match. It was so disappointing. There were so many handling errors. It was just garbage.
Yeah, there was a lot of times in the middle of that game where there was nothing happening.
Yeah,
it was literally just restarting in the midfield with a line out or a scrum to someone. Then it would go through maybe 3 or 4 phases, and then it would be dropped.
Yeah.
And then it was a scrum to the other team. And it was like
the team that got the penalties. And I mean, that's it. Like, that's all I want to say about it. It was really garbage. Both teams should be way better. Yeah. And disappointing. Huge congrats to Ian McKinley on getting his first cap.
Ian McKinley getting his first cap. I hope he becomes a stalwart in that Italy team, because he is a classy halfback, to be honest, and he can play foot. He can slot in at 15. Sign of a true footballer.
Fiji, where's the consistency though? Where's the consistency? You just
still don't like their 10.
I don't like Ben Vula. I just don't like. It's not even that. It's where's it's really hard when you're one of those teams when you have to reassemble your squad from all over the place. It's always new. It always seems to be a little chaotic. But they look to finally have something last summer, a little bit of structure to them, and then they got that great win against Scotland in Suva, and they were coming out of the line. They were doing good things, and it just seems like again we're starting from scratch with a nonsense Fiji team, and it's like, well, you're never going to improve, are you? And then
it seems World Rugby is conspiring to make that happen.
I agree with that. Against all three of them, Tonga, Fiji and Samoa, World Rugby doesn't give a shite about it, and that's the shame. But hopefully, I was kind of hoping Fiji, just in spite of that, will get something going.
That's what we're always hoping for.
It needs a really good coach to do it, but we'll see. I mean, it's another we'll see. But right now, it's a black mark against Fiji and a black mark against Italy for being as bad when they should be better. Like, they have Chorizo and Zebra playing well. They actually finally have a base from which to pick. And then there were moments like towards the end where it actually did look uncomfortable for Italy when they were 16-10 up, and there was little moments of Conor O'Shea going, "Oh,
are we going to lose?" Because he had that picture in his head of that coast-to-coast Fiji try that can so easily happen to this Italian team. But it's just but it didn't happen in the end, and it was the bit of flair that the game could have needed to be a classy game. Would have been great to see it finish.
It would have been a better game if it had that flair, but it didn't. No. And both sides have improving to do ahead of next week.
But have improved somewhat as well.
There was no evidence of that improvement on the pitch, which is why I'm just holding them to a higher standard than I otherwise would have. Like a couple of years ago, I would have been like, bog standard Italy Fiji game, and now I'm like, boys, you're better than this. So
it's fair criticism. It's fair call. And the other game was just stellar, and it has a bearing on this weekend as well, is that Georgia going into machine of destruction mode into Plessis and completely annihilating Canada, who are arguably a more attacking based team.
Still found some tries.
Canada are dangerous enough, but Georgia
they've added a ruthless dimension to their game. They've added just a willingness to find tries, and you saw that this year. With their game, obviously they did lose in Romania, which irritated them, but they haven't lost for ages before then. But they were actually changing their game, and you saw that in Argentina this year.
What's your man Ashvili? What's their fullback's name?
I don't know. The names are always crazy. I mean, I really do wish I knew the names more. I've been watching them play, but there's names just. It's just a language barrier for me where it just does my head in. I mean, Gorgodze took me years to remember. I was a bit like Mark Robson with the Godzilla. There was Zirakashvili for Claremont as well. It's just a language thing that I need to get over because I love them so much, but the names all just sound the same to me. They have that class little scrum half as well.
That's it, their backline. That's because they've always had that ruthlessness in their pack, and like when you look at some of the players who've come over, like your Gorgodzes or your Zirakashvilis, they always had that grit, that biting down of the mouthpiece kind of attritional in your face nature. But what they also had, and they showed that up in the last World Cup when they were in fixtures that we felt they should have had the upper hand in, but they just were useless with the ball. They won loads of ball. They had 60-70% possession against teams of similar ilk, but could not use it. Whereas now they're finding scores.
It's also it's a noticeable change in philosophy as well. Like they went to Argentina this year, they embraced the chaos, found some great tries, and they still stood up front. But and then the main issue becomes fitness, and obviously just like the fatigue that we never get to see them play a top tier team in Tbilisi, and there's no there's no,
not holding my breath for it either.
Yeah, exactly. But there's no there's no measuring the degree to which that affects you traveling from Tbilisi to anywhere that plays rugby. I mean, you have a long way to go before you find a rugby playing nation from Tbilisi in any direction. I suppose Italy is your closest. But
I definitely have my suspicions that if like you were to send like either Ireland, England, France, Wales, Scotland, any of the home nations, if they had a summer tour that had involved going to Tbilisi,
especially if it was like the way the Georgians come to our town, because the Georgians will likely come to Wales this week and get caught and look tired and look not themselves and get beat up and lose by 30, and then you're like, what is this Georgian team anyway? But like if we had to play them the way that they have to play us, and this is the point that loads of we see Fumana Sapalo on Twitter from Samoa making this point a lot, and I was like, if we got treated the way they got treated, if we had a summer tour where it was like, alright, you're going to USA, then you're going to Georgia, then you're playing 2 matches against Australia, go. And I was like, okay, fuck. And that was it. Like if Georgia are going out from Tbilisi for their home match because they're power ranked above Canada, so they get to host them. Then they're gonna host Canada, then they're gonna have to go to Wales because you don't get to host Wales, and then play there, and then go back and host USA. So it's like up back, loads of travel. It's impossible to get set, and one of the huge values of the Northern Hemisphere teams is that they can get set. In this match, when they are in Tbilisi, always great crowds, great atmosphere, and then they look themselves
as well. They had that wonderful finish that kind of went semi-viral around the rugby communities, a little Superman dive for that chase try. But
there was great tries.
They were fine. They were playing at a quicker pace, and their pack still looks formidable to the point where that's the point I was making is like if you were to send any of even if it was just one of those growing the game things, if Ireland had to tour like Tbilisi and play against Romania and then play 1 or 2 African nations as well, have to travel down because we're spreading the game, play like Nigeria, play Kenya, and you're just like. Yeah, Georgia could scalp our IRB team. Georgia could in Tbilisi get a win on us because it's very easy for us to be a little bit jet lagged, a little bit sore, and Georgia will be hitting them straight away if they're disjointed, fragmented kids teams that we are prone to send out on those kinds of tours. They could be getting serious scalps, but they're not being given the opportunity to do it. As it stands, they're
forcing their way into the
top
conversation
of the second tier. Like in terms of you're talking about the tier below, the ones that aren't getting regular game time, the ones that aren't getting regular
overtaking Japan is the best. For me,
but they're not going to get anywhere near the investment because Japan.
Japan and the US are who the World Rugby wants to be the best, and I think we will get into World Rugby.
We're going to conclude the podcast with that because we're boiling up.
But for sure, Georgia looking really good, forcing themselves into the conversation. Their game has evolved to the point that now that they have that baseline pack which hasn't disappeared, but it's not their whole focus, and they are using it to get tries. Mull tries are still a stalwart of who they are, but they also have an appreciation for looking for tries from their pack. They can look unfit sometimes, especially when they're embracing those chaotic Argentina style games. They can just get caught sometimes in defence, and I don't think their defence is as stellar as their pack play or some of their attacking play. So we'll see to what extent that gets exposed going forward.
But they're also in a World Cup cycle themselves, and that's what they're targeting. Yes. They're looking to perform next year.
Building blocks being laid. They're definitely look value for being in the Six Nations. And that stuffing of Canada, because I was asking people who haven't really been in the loop of Georgian rugby, like, what do you think the score was in that game, Georgia-Canada? And most people were like, Georgia pretty good, 16-10 to Georgia. This was like almost the most common guess again. It's like 54-22, which is what they've been doing this year, conceding and scoring, and that's what they did in Argentina. I mean, Argentina obviously the right side of that result.
Indeed, but optimism is right. And then there's the other a bit of basketball going on. Scotland, Samoa playing a great game with
game of rugby.
It was just back and forth. Two sides that were so game. As much as it was a throw-about kind of feel, there was an intensity to it. Both sides wanted to win. At the end of it, the last 10 minutes were crazy. They were throwing the game at each other, or both teams trying to wrestle it off each other.
Tim Nanai Williams
at 10 looks a very viable option in kind of that same Curtly Beale mould where it's like
get him in the game,
get him, make no bones about saying like, right, you're the key. You're the key to this team. If you play well, we play well. If you don't, we don't.
Yeah, and it just works with his personality.
Yeah, exactly. Like motivating him that way, and then giving him the 10 jersey instead of the 13 or the anywhere otherwise. Get his hands on the ball every play.
Certainly better than utility back for the Chiefs. Like certainly might feel better for the ego.
Indeed. And, no, it was great to see, and Samoa look good value for the next World Cup. They're another one, same points that we just made before. They need more games, more consistency in just getting to play against these teams. But as far as the quality they have, it is all there. As far as their instincts for the game, it is all there. As far as their physicality, pretty much all there. Scotland just looked the slightly more efficient, more technical team.
They did
in terms of the pack, in terms of some of the key.
I appreciate that Scotland are looking to find killer tries, and they're doing a really great job of doing that. Their back three look awesome. Dunbar looks actually really good at 12. Finn Russell great at facilitating those moments. They have issues, mostly not with the back row. Actually, their breakdown competitiveness is good.
Hugh Jones is getting a load of praise, but his defence
off the ball, there are issues with Hugh Jones in particular. Like, it's a trade-off with Hugh Jones. I feel like if you're picking Hugh Jones, it's a good like philosophical statement of who you are, but it's also like putting a ceiling on your potential as a team, because he's a weakness in defence that everyone is going to exploit.
And England wrote the book on it last year in terms of how to apply that pressure to that particular area of the Scottish defensive line.
The other thing is that excuse me, go on.
No, that was
I was just going to say the other thing is that their tight five look weak, and I include their second rows in that, who everyone likes to praise, Johnny Gray and this new lad. They look really weak, and their defence around the fringes is appalling. Like, it's not good enough. Like, we talk about Scotland, like we have been grading them on this curve going forward and really admiring the steps forward that they've been taking. Well, haven't taken those steps, where are you going? Because Ireland and England are still trundling along. Wales are coming back. You have France, you don't know what you're going to get. So where are you in that conversation? You beat Australia this year. Like that, those building blocks that we talk about, you have this great attack, you have this great potential to play with the ball, you have the potential to score those 44 points of wonderful tries. What's the next block? Because that's not it. You're not done. You know, you have a good back row that can challenge teams at the breakdown, and you can score tries. You know, you have to add layers to that. And at the moment their defence is not intense enough, and I just don't see it set to improve. They're really lethargic off the ball, and I wonder will that change? I wonder will Gregor get on them? Obviously, it's early doors, but that was a great game, and they were really caught cold. Excuse me, they were really caught cold by a great Samoa side, and I don't want to overstate my concerns, because they
Samoa looked very good,
and Scotland have had a great year. They're a great team. They've really made the step up and beat Ireland, and it's just been great for them. But it's like, okay, what's next? You know, that's
got to be the way it is. And but it was stellar rugby for the neutral. That was a bit of the game, you know. That was class. As opposed to, like, even as much as we love Ireland, like, I'd imagine from a neutral's point of view, you'd watch the first 20 minutes of that game, you know probably exactly how it's going to go. This one was in the balance and down to the wire. It was crazy shenanigans going on at the very end, and it's just great. Scotland are good value for fixtures at the moment. This Scotland team, as far as scoring and as far as conceding, they make it interesting.
They make it interesting,
and they make it quick as well. The pace of the games are played, the tempo is always good high speed stuff, unlike what we saw in Twickenham, say. So that was like, I think, I don't know, moving on from the games. Those were the fixtures.
Samoa was class. Those were the fixtures, and I just want to pivot more or less from there to World Rugby, and we were just touching on that with Samoa and with Georgia.
World Rugby, boo.
Yeah, I just like we can touch on the World Cup 2023 is going to France.
That was the news that we got this week. That was yesterday.
Actually. An interesting
Thursday as we
they picked South Africa, but like I don't want to speculate regarding brown envelopes, because that's not on. It's not like
journalism. It's not my. I don't know. But what I do know, what I like, I'm not talking about brown envelopes either. That narrative annoys me as well. Like,
very simplistic.
It's the same kind of criticism. My thought on it is that of the teams that are there, like, obviously money is the driving force and in revenue, and it is a business. So like rugby is growing, and that's going to require money. So I understand the investment in. I understand why they're investing in the US and Japan more than, say, Samoa and Fiji, and I can understand all these reasons, and revenue being the main thing. But when you're looking at just rugby on a whole, and what are the benefits and what are the problems. And you're looking at these three teams that we're putting forward a pitch. You have Ireland, you have South Africa, and you have France. Ireland are have been trending ever since the game's turned professional. We've been on the up and up. We've had great generations of players. We had Bod being there as representative for our bid. We've just been growing and growing and growing. We've got clubs now that are very illustrious, one of the best teams in Europe. We've got our European Cups. We've got silverware to back it up. Where now we just put a score on the Springboks, who are repeatedly that. We've been growing the game, and we're doing it in our home base. We are producing indigenous talent, copious amounts of it. We're supplying the game. When you look at what France are contributing at the moment, they're actively damaging Southern Hemisphere rugby by plundering their players. They have a league, they have a division between how they're running their national side versus how they're running their clubs. The clubs seem to hold all the power and hold all the sway, don't have any onus on them to pick French talent at all over the mercenaries they're buying. And they're producing this league in the top couture that certainly last year is the worst rugby available to watch anywhere in the world.
It's also insular.
It's
also it's like this idea that they're creating this franchise like La Liga or like something like that, or the Champions League, that they're creating all the world's top talent. Nobody's watching the top couture outside of France.
It's
nobody's watching it.
Yeah.
It's garbage. It's terrible to look at, even though it has all these great players. It's terrible to look at. Yeah, I agree. France are awful. They're doing an awful disservice to the World Cup. And you talk about Ireland being great. They don't care though.
Yeah,
that's the point. Like Georgia are also doing great. Georgia's attendances are through the roof, and it's just, they just don't care because you're not big enough. It's like they've caught the money bug, and for a non-profit organization, it can be such a tempting thing to find, And it's the same as FIFA. Like they just want to be heading not the same as FIFA. Like FIFA is obviously overtly rampantly corrupt, which is not what I'm saying World Rugby is. But what it is the nature of how the game's taking its shape. Where international rugby is lying when compared to club rugby in soccer. They've got it arseways in soccer. They've got it completely wrong, and they've destroyed the international game.
Yeah,
it's a
running joke. It happens all the time. It's like, can't watch any football this weekend. It's the fucking internationals. Like, well, can't wait till the Premier League's back. Yeah. And it's like, that is horse. That is not what we want from rugby.
It just limits it. It limits it to like the same franchises every year and the same narratives every year, and it isn't what it could be. And that's the issue with soccer. I watch soccer. I like soccer, but that's the issue with it as a sport, is that it's limited in its capacity to be interesting because the narratives are always the same. It's always the same teams. It's always the same everything. So it's just
for that to be heading that way. And then the other point I was going to make is on South Africa, who we did just talk ad nauseum about the criticisms of some of their things, but like this quota system, just in terms of getting things arseways, dead wrong. Like rugby needs to be a meritocracy, and like even their bid was like, minimum investment, maximum return, like absolute horseshit. In terms of that, it's just the thing that sits uneasily with me is that report that we got a couple of weeks ago. Just the notion of, well, we would recommend based on these criteria that we've picked that South Africa hosted.
And they didn't give it to them anyway, because France made the eloquent point of like, South Africa's political position is arseways. That report doesn't take that into account. We don't even know what South Africa's going to look like as a country in 6 years' time. We certainly don't know what their rugby team is going to look like. We certainly don't know what their rugby support is going to look like. We know France is still going to be here. Contrary to popular belief, it's not going to be the Islamic State of France by 2023. But it isn't. It's going to be the same. It's going to be there. It's going to be fine. And they made that point eloquently. So it's like, that's not taking it. And then it seemed to sway people, I guess, assuming there's no brown envelopes, which we are.
That's
the argument that seemed to make sway. I mean, the people didn't choose South Africa based on the criteria of the report because the report didn't take the full context into account. But by all means, dismiss Ireland based on the report.
Yeah, we don't have the stadia. It seems. Also horseshit. We do have enough.
Porky Queef isn't finished yet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's only 7 years, to go. And it's
absolute horseshit. And it's like, I don't know, from all the metrics and from what we were gathering from fans, certainly anywhere, like the stadium would be full for all the games. The festive atmosphere would have been great.
The only practical effect that report had was to take Ireland out of the running.
Yeah,
it was to dismantle the favourites, to take it completely out. You finished last, you're done. Says report, which I read, which was vague, Now Ireland have asked for specifics and they're now going to get specifics. Why were the specifics not in the report? What are the specifics? Please tell me. Like, what are the specific reasons why Ireland should be disqualified from hosting a World Cup? It just feels dishonest, is my point.
It is all dishonest. That's been the feeling throughout the whole week for me. Is just like I knew before the Wednesday that we weren't going to get it. Mainly off the back of that report, it's like we're not going to get this World Cup.
Yeah.
But we should, by any kind of reasonable fan. But that's been the way World Rugby's been going for years. Is that if you, as a fan and a true appreciator of rugby, think of something that probably should be happening, that's exactly what World Rugby won't do.
Yeah,
and that's been the case throughout.
And this is it. Like, how long have we been asking for Fiji and Tonga and Samoa to be given a chance? And Georgia, year after year of unbeaten season after unbeaten season in Europe. Year after year of doing it, they won't give them a chance. They won't let them in the Six Nations because the money's not there, and they're still not doing it. And like Paul O'Connell's making the point eloquently on BBC about like the fact that these countries just don't have any model that can pay for paying their players consistently. They can't pay their players, and it's like. And
we had last week. We had England players chipping in their match fees to help to Samoa.
Yeah. But that's because there isn't a tournament that facilitates that. They've decided basically to strip and abandon the Pacific Nations Cup. It occasionally happens in the form of like 3 friendlies and then they award the trophy to someone, but like there doesn't seem to be any consistent tournament there because it would cost money to do, and they don't want to spend money. They don't want to spend money doing that. They're not interested in having Fiji and Tonga and Samoa strong because their priorities aren't on the game. They aren't on what a fan's priorities are, which is how can we have the game looking as good and as global as they are, which is what they say in their mission statement is their priority. It's not. It's not. And if that is their priority, by every objective measure, they're failing. And that's not like the World Cup is just a symptom of that problem. It's not that big a deal. It kind of sucks from our perspective because we're Irish.
We're not going to be demanding. Like, it is the first time we've bid to do it. We will bid again.
My point is that, and your point is that we lost to garbage in South Africa and France. We lost to unions that are doing damage to the game. If we lost to Italy, we would have had to just
say, well, like, Italy are big enough. I suppose that's probably fair enough. You know, my main take on it is that South Africa, it's more so with quotas, also what they're demonstrating on the pitch and just how they're not using their resources well at all at the moment, and mismanaging everything from top to bottom. That's their main fault. But France, like French rugby, I like French rugby, but it is the most damaging thing that is existent in world rugby, in like across the globe. It is the worst thing about rugby at the moment. Is France and the top coutures and the robbing of players. Aaron Cruden's not going to play for the All Blacks now because France, and Toulon are going to buy trophies because France, and like it's horseshit. And then the net result is a really slow game. Like, they're not even, for all that, you watch the top coutures, you may idly tune in when it's like we do when it's on Sky Sports occasionally or whatever. You'll kind of glance at a game for 10 minutes and see a different sport entirely, moving at a snail's pace.
No coaching,
barely getting into territory, winning a penalty, chipping it over, and then games finish 16-9, and it's shite. It's 16-9 to the home team, and you have players that you're looking at going like, oh, there's Manonu, he's class, isn't he? And you're looking at him play going, oh no, he's put on a bit of weight and he's slow and it's not happening for him.
Because there's no professional to it. It isn't to it either. And that's the other point, is like this idea that it's sustainable, that you can have this footballing model, is garbage.
Because football is its own economy as well. Like, rugby is not as big as football.
Nobody is tuning into the top coutures outside of France. Nobody. It's not a big market. No one's watching it. You're not gonna. You think you're gonna break the US market with the top coutures? You're dead wrong. You're dead wrong.
More likely with the Pro 14.
More likely, but if you get a US
team in there,
that's the investment. But this idea that you're going to just market this top coutures as like the Premier League, where it's all these franchises, no one's going to be invested in it. No one is invested in Toulon outside of Toulon, and even nowadays Toulon aren't getting those great crowds. Nobody's invested in it except Boujalal, who's in the tank
pouring money down, setting it on fire.
But listen, we've done enough.
Yeah, it is ranting and it's railing, and it's kind of angry man yells at cloud, because we know nothing's going to change about it, and the short memory syndrome of it means that it'll all be forgotten soon enough.
That's the thing, is like we said in 2008, I think a good few people said, and we were in the camp, young men as we were, but we said, like, when Toulon were kind of coming up and creeping on the scene,
and Racing Metro,
this was a while ago, and it was like, This has the potential to destroy Super Rugby in particular. And then it was like, for years and years Super Rugby was fine, everything's fine, and you just forget about it. Toulon are just part of the vernacular. just having like 10 Australians play 10 Australians in the France just becomes part of the vernacular, and then all of a sudden you have a season like this in Super Rugby when the tournament has been destroyed. And it has happened, and it happened slowly, but it happened, and it happened because nobody said or did anything.
No one put
when
anyone in
came
check.
up.
No one put anyone in check, and they're like, I don't know why France have such power that they can no change can be brought in, but someone needs to unilaterally decide, like, if you're a French club, you need to have X amount of French players on the pitch.
You can't do that. They had this debate in soccer, which is interesting. You can't do it in the EU because the EU has laws against that, against employment, against limiting employment to domestic people over other EU
Where
nations.
is the Irish residency rule or the Irish rule
for your national team? Sure, but you can't say to Leinster Rugby, if Leinster have like 10 Frenchmen come in, you can't say to Leinster Rugby you can't pick those Frenchmen because that would be discrimination under EU law. But you can do it to players not in the EU. So you could say to France, legally speaking, you could say to the French clubs, you can't pick 10 Australians in your team. You have to limit it to 3, which wouldn't be discrimination against fellow EU nations under EU law. Yeah,
interesting.
So they had this debate in soccer years and years ago. They tried to do it, and it was like, no, you can't do that because it's against the EU law. So it's an interesting one because all you're thinking about, you're not thinking about discrimination, you're thinking about protecting your union. But like it's
they have French players
and also
playing
you're
in
importing
France.
these men. You're not discriminating against them by not importing them, but whatever.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. This seems a bit of a contrived argument, maybe an argument of convenience from, I wonder which side that argument came.
No, this came from the stoic liberalism of the clubs, you know.
Of course. Yeah, of course. So I suppose we'll move on with Parkett. Congrats, France. And as Cian Healy so eloquently put in his tweet, hopefully we'll be going there as defending champs, and that'll be the crack. So we'll get our revenge that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long ways to go on that score yet. But the player of the year is that
nominees? Yeah, we touched on that.
We did mention a few.
It was announced. It was
announced.
The World Rugby Player of the Year nominees.
It's not really that big a deal, and it's a bit subjective, and it's often very southern centric. But
maybe they're too English in it this year. Too English
who couldn't be denied.
Rico and Bowden Barrett, good calls. Farrell and Itoje, good calls. Israel Folau, questionable call. You'd rather have Kurt in there. Folau's been good.
Folau's been good, but I think Kirtley's just been more integral. But there's also people like you're talking about the unlucky to miss out. Jay Davis
for sure.
Conor Murray
perhaps.
The talk was of Tyg Furlong, but that's born of the other issue, which is that there's never been a prop.
There's never been a prop nominated,
which is an issue. Like talking about discrimination,
look at
it's another thing about stats though. That's the same point we were making earlier on. It's like if you're looking at stats, then it's very hard for a tight row forward or a tight like a tight 5 forward to be top of any of those stats because that's not their role in the team is to be making tackles or carries or anything like that.
So there's a job that they have to do that they do so well. The Tyg would have been a weird shout. Damien McKenzie was another option, but he probably just didn't hit the peaks that he hit in Super Rugby in his All Black jersey. As good as he has been, it's a high bar for me. It should go to Owen Farrell.
Probably will.
You know, Tied the Lions series was starting for them. Heineken Cup with Saris was the key man in that team, and won a Six Nations with England was the key man in that team. So it's a pretty easy call for me. The All Blacks won, so I guess you could go Rico. It could easily happen that way. Rico's been great, but it doesn't really matter either way.
Is this going to be one of those years where it has to be Owen Farrell, has to be Brian O'Driscoll, has to be surprise inclusion? It's actually Richie McCaw. Richie McCaw wins this year. But so that's another thing that happened. It kind of got dwarfed because of World Cup bids and matches and things, as well it should be, because it's not really. It's just a bit arbitrary.
It's a bit arbitrary. It's nice. It's a nice thing to have in your resume. World Player of the Year nominee.
Sure.
So for a player, it's
100%. Yeah, feather goes into cap
for sure.
But anyway, we'll finish up with a look ahead to next week, I guess. Because there are some juicy fixtures at the weekend.
There are.
From a personal point of view, Ireland are playing Fiji, which is going to be a bit of fun. Bit of basketball.
Ireland picked their team for that match, which is 13 changes, completely new team. Interesting to see if Fiji put it up to them. Because that could be interesting.
Yeah, we could be disjointed.
Carberry and 10 might look.
I'm also curious, like with that centre combo of McCluskey and Chris Farrell. Chris Farrell is someone who I think has had a poor start to his tenure in Munster with a few decent games and breaks and glimpses. I actually don't think I rate him as a player currently. I think he's a good physical specimen, so there's maybe potential for him to grow. I also think there's potential for McCluskey to have an subpar performance purely because of the partnership he now has to forge with this Chris Farrell.
I don't know.
And could play himself out of contention again.
McCluskey likes to work with wingers and out halves, and he's a good out half to work with.
He does.
Wingers to work with. So I mean, well, obviously Dave Kearney, but I think that backline should be good enough. The other thing they are is big.
Yeah.
Because they've gone from Marmion and Carberry
at 10, so they need some, or 10 and 9 and 10, so they need some bolstering in the midfield. Sure. Yeah.
Also, who's going to be tackling Nadolo? Is that going to be Sweetman's job?
Who's going to be? Yeah,
depends what they put in Nadolo. I mean, they have him on the wing, but he could just be crashing from any old place. Dave Kearney is as far away from Nadolo.
The one-on-one Nadolo v Dave Kearney.
Well, we know how that would go.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. But I mean,
hopefully we flex our muscles and run in some tries, and maybe Fiji score 1 or 2 too.
Fiji were very poor last week. They must improve.
I hope they do. Dublin. Yeah,
but
if they don't, we will put a score on them.
Yeah,
that's what I feel confident saying about this Ireland team more than any other Ireland team before. Is that if they don't show up, I think we will put a score on them.
A proper score.
Yeah,
yeah. It'd be interesting to see if they could go through the time. I know it's early doors yet, but if you could go through a tour without conceding a try, that'd be a hell of a statement.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Big Farrell defence.
That'd be nice, because that's the big change that's happened here is Andy Farrell's defence. The other game's going on, France against the Springboks. I'm going to say right now, I think the Springboks will win, just despite all of the journos things. I think as bad as I think they are coached, I think their pack are infinitely more elite than that French pack, and the French are just as rudderless. And Andre Pollard is starting at 10, yo.
Yeah.
So I think
change gonna come.
The winds of change
gonna come.
So I think Box to win that one.
I think the Box to win that too. I don't think, however, that it'll be all that good of a game.
Probably not.
I think it'll be a messy game. Le Mess in France.
Yeah,
it'll be like, there'll be some chaotic moments that'll be quick, and maybe if you were a neutral who was a little bit uneducated, maybe could confuse that quickness for quality. But it won't. It'll actually, you know what? It'll look. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Jaguares versus kind of Sharks in Jaguares kind of level of craziness.
That was a great game. Do you remember that game? We watched that game.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. You weren't just picking random teams. That was an interesting game.
Yeah. I was actually picking just random teams.
But we watched that game. Jaguares Sharks in
Jaguares
in Buenos Aires, I think, this year, and that was a great game in Super Rugby. The Sharks won that game, and it was chaos, but it was also, there was interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It was the first look at Kerwin Bosch, really, our first proper look at young Kerwin Bosch.
He looked good. Yeah, he did look good. He looked a little bit of an assured control, which could potentially be Pollard in terms of the distinction with difference. If this game does become chaotic, I think the presence of the likes of Pollard could be the difference between the two teams.
Yeah.
Is Serpentine back?
Serpentine is not back. Francois Fenter is in at 12.
Not Dialindi, who's there to provide some savage impact from the bench, man.
He is a serious mystery.
Yankees and Dialindi coming on with 20 minutes to go.
Dialindi is one of the great wonders
game in the balance. He's
one of the great wonders of the world.
He doesn't do anything.
He actually is Emre Can, you know that, from Liverpool. Like, he's the same man. He just tugs out for the Springboks every now and again and gives away penalties. He's why he has to give away penalties, is because he just doesn't want to look conspicuous. Like, if people look too long, I realise I'm Emre Can. I'm a footballer. I'm not a rugby man, so I just elbow people in the face and get sent off.
We're not going to let up on Dialindi until he vacates that bench spot, because he's not there for any good
reason. Train with Liverpool. God knows you need it. Like,
still no Combrink.
Still no Combrink. He's not on the tour.
Sam occupying that wing spot still.
That wasn't the problem, man. That wasn't.
It was a problem. It was one of the many problems.
Yeah. Look at,
but it probably won't
get through the tour and then get rid of Katsia and then start again.
That's the plan, and that's probably what like similar. We're kind of, our banner term is this, that of the autumn series that have come before, this is going to be one that's slightly less intense and less. Just there's less weight to it. There's less to pick through in terms of what you're deciding. Like the Six Nations next year will be the big thing, more specific barometer. I think we have a full stop on Alistair Coetzee. Like, the jury's in. The jury has come in recent weeks, and it's like, he can't coach. They're not doing anything right, and the issues that we're seeing are coaching issues before they're anything else. He can't coach rugby at this level, and he has to go, and that's it. And that's
all you can say. But they'll probably beat France.
They probably will. In any case, what is the next one? Well, we have a couple of good ones. I'm gonna just. Who else?
England Australia is the big one.
England Australia is the big one lining up. There's also Scotland All Blacks, which is a good game as far as rugby is concerned. I just feel like the All Blacks will do what the All Blacks will just be better than Scotland.
Steve, that revert to type tactic that Steve Hansen occasionally does would really work against Scotland. Attacking them around the fringes, getting your Sonny Bills into the game. It's such a game for Sonny Bill. Lining up against those boys, Hugh Jones and Dunbar. So it's like there's so many avenues for success for the All Blacks against that Scottish team.
And as much as Scotland have grown leaps and bounds, and we still have much more to go, New Zealand, I think, are just going to play rugby against them. It's going to be another kind of throw around kind of game, high pace at times. Scotland may grab a few lovely tries, but they will ultimately.
Scotland have to target them at the breakdown. They haven't been that great at the breakdown, and Scotland in Hamish Watson and John Barkley have genuinely serious operators. They have to attack them in that area. They have to get at them. They have to steal their ball and give them unclean ball for the whole match. That's the only hope. And if they do that and they can get a bit of turnover ball, get some early tries, that's the hope. But in general, what you expect to happen is the All Blacks to flex their muscles a little bit and maybe put a score on them, because they haven't been doing that in recent weeks, and they are good enough to damage that Scotland team. But it'll take an interesting shape. We don't know.
The other one that's interesting from that point of view as well is Wales playing against Georgia.
Huge game,
which is like we were saying earlier on, such a test of Gatland's mettle as far as sticking to this system is concerned, because if Georgia are to upset Wales in Cardiff, that is the way they're doing it, is by getting in their face, by closing off the space, by like if this disjointed Welsh pack, like this is a Welsh pack that I'm so unfamiliar with.
Dan Lady as captain, and Nicky Smith, Christian Dacey, Leon Brown, Adam Beard, Corey Hill. Dan Lady is
who are these people? I'm sure they're all super athletes. I'm sure they're very mobile in the loose, but Georgia are an elite level pack almost. They're almost getting there, and then it's like they could very seriously put it up to them. But the other thing that could happen, which is why I'm tempering expectations as far as that, like Wales, I think probably still are favourites in the Millennium Stadium because of that travel issue. Like, because of any of this, like it's a lot to ask for this Georgia team after an near unbeaten. Is it an unbeaten year for them?
No, they lost earlier in the year to Romania. Do you remember that?
Yes, they did. It was
the first time they lost a match in that Nations Cup for I think 4 years,
and it was to Romania.
But they actually still won the cup.
Because of their aggregate score overall. But so it's like after the season though, that loss notwithstanding, the success of their season, going to Wales now and to try and get a win is a lot to ask. But what they could end up doing, and
I think Argentina.
Sorry, yes, they did. But just in terms of, they played a lot of games. That's more my point. Is like they played a lot of games, and they've travelled around the world and grown. They have an identity as a team. This is it. They're a more mature team than this Welsh team. Because of that.
Yeah, and there just isn't that big. There obviously is to some extent, but there isn't that big a European factor anymore. And I actually think getting Gorgaz out of that squad might not be the worst thing.
No.
Because I also think he's lost a lot of what he had since he's moved to Toulon. He's become another Toulon player, like old and lethargic and comfortable, and just
snarl.
Yeah, but they all do that in Toulon, don't they? The Wilkinson effect is long dead.
Yeah, well, that's just purely Johnny Wilkinson being class. Like he was always going to be so.
Discipline that he had when he went there just hasn't been repeated by anybody since. There's just an utterly undisciplined team, and that's such as Gorgadze where he's gone, and he's just racking up the penalty count.
It makes them more of a team. They're not galvanised behind his example quite so much as they had been in years gone by. But it's going to make for an interesting. I think it's one that I just don't know what's going to happen because we're still learning from this Welsh team. Maybe they will click and they'll tear them apart.
It's going to be a good test for Gatland, good early test for Gatland. And if they do, obviously they've got a decent backline. They've got Priestland in this time. They've got Watkin, who's another distributor at 12. Scott Williams back in the team, so they're switching things up.
It's good because like faced with this Georgia team, what would have been the very negative, backward thing to do would be to pick your ladies, go for Warren Ball. Because Warren Ball could actually run over this Georgian team for sure.
Well, what's interesting is that a year or two ago this game would have been an absolute forward fest, whereas now I'm expecting high scores. I'm expecting high scores. I'm expecting 30 something to 20 something, perhaps, and I like maybe it'll be 30 something to 16. I don't know, but Wales would probably win. I think it'd be interesting. I think Georgia have a chance. The main game though,
I'm hopeful because the other thing, like going back to the World Rugby thing, is like. Fuck you, Wales. Fuck you, Scotland. Why aren't you voting for us?
Oh, yeah, forget about that. Wales and Scotland didn't vote for us. Huge props to England who did.
Yeah.
And I just got to say,
and Australia.
I think Australia. There was a rumor of that, but then it also somebody says like none of the other ones were actually released. So there was one rumor that I read that said Australia voted for us, but then I don't think we know that.
Won't comment.
I don't think we know
did.
that. But England did, and I just got to say, like, because we've given out about England occasionally, they're a huge credit to them that they always stand by Ireland, that they have this affinity with Ireland, and that they are actually, as unions go in all sports, even in soccer, the most corrupt sport, they don't seem that corrupt at all. They actually conduct themselves more honourably than most nations when it comes to that kind of business, especially in the sporting world. Like in the Olympics, I don't believe any of them are on dope except Mo Farah. But like they're all, and that they compete every year because they just channel themselves. They look to do it honourably, and they are honourable, and they're loyal, and they value those things. And I just got to say huge credit to the English, and that it did mean something from an Irish perspective, getting
from an Irish rugby fans perspective.
Thanks for not shafting us and embarrassing us
the way everyone else did.
And that was what Scotland and Wales did by not voting for us. That's embarrassing, and that hurts.
Which is why, come on, Georgia, let's have you winning in the Millennium Stadium.
Maybe the Georgians
for the
voted
crack.
for us. Maybe the Georgians for the wins.
So as much as we'd love to see that for the crack, because why not have Georgia take Wales' scalp in Millennium Stadium?
It's a big ask. I mean, it's not likely.
I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm saying it is possible. But that, I suppose it's just part of it. It's possible, but I think Wales are going to win. The big game is England-Australia. Two big guns in Twickenham, duking it out.
Neither side. Well, I say neither side with a strong pack on paper. The Wallabies haven't had a strong pack on paper in so long. But you'll just look at it. Like Sean McMahon has really grown into the role. So has Adam Coleman.
It's possible, and I think it's going to happen, that the Aussies are going to grind to a bit of a halt. There'll be some drop balls, and I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see that, like that Twickenham suffocating atmosphere that you see sometimes, where it's a little slow but it's dominant, and it's stalling slowly but surely for Oz.
George Ford at 10 still, with Farrell moved to 12. The same thing that we saw earlier. Like Farrell at 10 is a serious thing, and he never has, as much as it worked with Sexton, like he doesn't hit the same heights that he hits at 10 when he's at 12. And as much as you like the two distributors, maybe getting Slade back in there, maybe getting someone else back in there, even a Steenson or someone like that at 12, and keeping Farrell in the 10 jersey might have been a better option, but they're persisting with Ford and having Farrell at 12.
I still maintain Ford is a weak link in that team. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The man can't tackle.
Well, that's true.
But he's also
Curry Betty and Curran Durrani and Karevi all those 3Ks coming barging down his channel.
So big and so dynamic, the Aussies can obviously match them.
I can't see this Czech team not showing up.
No, I don't think it'll be not showing up. I just think I have a suspicion that it'll stall.
I think they could be beat, but I don't think they're not going to show up. And I think that in terms of weapons, England's scrum, which has been a weapon, isn't looking at that. Vunipola, Dylan Hartley and Dan Cole, that's only solid. That's all it's ever going to be.
The same is true of Australia. I think the scrum platform, certainly, like England may initially start by scrumming for penalties, but I think Australia will be scrumming for parity, and that's what they'll achieve, and then they'll just be in, out and play in the game.
And then you look at the breakdown, you got Michael Hooper and Sean McMahon, like really good breakdown operators. Pilota now has become a really great hooker. He's a better hooker than Dylan Hartley. Will Genia again.
Rob Shaw there again.
Rob Shaw, exactly. So you look at that England team, and I don't see stellar strength. And while they got away with it in the Six Nations up until they met Ireland, this Australia team looks like a side that was rife to beat them in the Six Nations. The team that didn't materialise. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. But
I definitely expect a contest. I think it'll actually be a one-score game, to be honest, by the end. But I just kind of edge out. Like, as much as I snarl doing, I think I'm giving the edge to England on it. It may just even be home advantage, but also the long season and the Twickenham factor, all manner of things. Just that little bit of hubris that Eddie Jones
really wants to do it, and it's their focus. But I think Cheika wants to do it as well. But
there's no doubt that this is the game of the weekend.
It's the game of the tour. There's a big four emerging in World Rugby ahead of the others. Like these kind of joke is Ireland were in 4th and South Africa were in 5th, and that game finished 38-3. So there's definitely a big four emerging at the top of New Zealand, England, Australia, and Ireland, and this is the only match between any of them in the whole tour. So it's going to be very interesting. England probably slight favourites, but I certainly see avenues for success.
I see success. Sure. I remember the game. I remember the last World Cup, man. Oh, do you remember those skip passes, man?
It's a different Wallaby team though. They
it
play
is,
different.
I know.
And Genia and Beale are the fulcrums as distributors, less so than Foley, which is exactly right for Foley.
Yeah, it's the same thing we were complimenting the Chiefs about when with Cruden at 10. Yeah, his responsibility is halved and like diminished certainly because
so he can be himself.
Yeah, and that's the same is true of Foley now, and Foley's playing better than he had been for the last couple of years in that jersey as such.
Reece Hodge even can come in as a distributor.
Hodge is a very solid, tidy player. He's a very checker player. I like him there.
It's all good, man. It's all good. And like Johnny May, is Johnny May going to make that tackle? Is Elliot Daly going to make that tackle on Curry Batty?
Well, you know who's not going to make the tackle? It's George Ford. but it'll have to be Johnny May scrambling across.
The thing though is that there is danger. Johnny May and Elliot Daly are try-finders. Anthony Watson is an extraordinary talent. And then when you've Owen Farrell as a distributor wherever he is on the pitch, those passes are going to be accurate as fuck. And then you've got Karevi at 13 and Kurandrani. You could exploit that.
So
it's going to be. It could be a real humdinger. It really could. So look forward to that. That's the game.
That's the game, and I think that's the podcast as well.
Yes,
we're going to wrap that up because that's over the 2 hours. I gotta go do a gig, but we're going to wrap up. Apologies for the little break in the middle. We'll make sure it's all edited nicely. But
that's a shame. Just edit that down.
That'd be grand. But it was a good one, and we're looking forward to the weekend's festivities. We'll try and get back to you next week. If not, it'll be after the November window that we're getting back into it. But
we'll be actually but hopefully not.
Hopefully not. We'll try not to, but we'll certainly be watching.
Oh, actually, we might next week. I don't know, but we will get one done. I'm pretty wrapped up
as well, but so it may be a couple of weeks time. That's what we're setting our stall out as, is 2 weeks. So we'll leave it there. We'll sign off. We'll say enjoy the rugby, and also questions, comments,
anything
remarks,
like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Snide remarks, even all welcome. Just getting involved. And we will try and do the Q&A bit next time we're around as well.
For sure. Listen, thanks very much. It's fun to be back. Fun to be doing it every now and again. Fun to be chatting about rugby. As always, the usual additions. We're only us. We're only fans. We're only commenting.
Not going to get above our station.
Please don't take any of this with anything other than a grain of salt. We're trying to chat. We're trying to see things our way. And when we get bullish, like I did about reporters, it's only born out of frustration that I think there's laziness going on.
Yeah, it's also like this is the kind of place where we just want to have an outlet to talk about some of the things that we're not seeing in that media coverage, because there are some great journalists doing great stuff as well, and there's some good analysis going in. But I like the idea of the big picture concepts, which you can thrash out in a podcast format more than a top 10 player ratings article sure. So this is what this is all about.
Alright, listen, that's enough waffle. See you lads. Bye.
You gonna throw your thing?
Oh yeah, hello thing, throw. Hey,
nice one. That's good. It's on you. Go. Let's go. France, New Zealand.
4, 3, 2, 1.
You right?
Yes.
Do you want me to do the hand?
Fine.
5,
you're supposed to be below the desk.
4,
it's not supposed to be on
3,
camera. But if you're moving it up, it's like really obvious. It's like, this is what they do. They're behind the camera, so they could do that. But if for us, it would be like this: 5, 4, 3.
I have no desk.
Try it
here.
Other hand.
It doesn't work.
It's so dumb.